Good evening, everyone. Please be seated. Welcome to the September 24th meeting of Regina City Council. Before we get into the formal agenda, it's my pleasure to recognize Councillor O'Donnell, who will speak to the Henry Baker Scholarship Awards. Councillor O'Donnell, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Henry Baker Hall. Tonight is, in my estimation, a very special night. Once a year, the City of Regina awards scholarships to 17 outstanding young people in our community. And it's my pleasure to introduce them to you. So the mayor is making his way into the horseshoe. And the students all know that when I call their name, they're going to come forward. And we have mums and dads and grandmas and grandpas, and you are welcome to come down and take a picture. So I'd like you to sit back and relax. And I'm going to tell you that what I'm about to tell you gives me great faith in the future. And all of these people, I think there's 5 of them that want to become doctors. I'm a client in the future, just so you know. So this should be fun. First young lady, Carissa Leifson. She comes from the Western College of Remedial Massage. In 2012, Carissa completed her university degree in administration and had been working in that field ever since. However, she found a desk job was not for her. After some research, she decided to become a massage therapist. She has volunteered with the Regina Folk Festival, Z99 Radiothon, and the Humane Society. This woman, who grew up on a farm, now calls Regina home and hopes to one day open her own clinic and provide good health care. Great goals, good luck. And this is where you clap. Stacy Plant, Gabriel Dumont. Stacy has been a hard worker. She wants to pursue a career in the hospitality industry and has already had great experience. She has upgraded herself with courses such as first aid and CPR, can handle many duties needed to operate a restaurant, work with customers, and has been for over 4 years in a supervisory role with staff. This is a very talented young woman, and we wish you well. Kayla Ward. Kayla is the third-year education at Suntep. She has had to juggle 3 jobs to get through her program, but finds time as well to volunteer at round dances and feasts, work with youth programming, and with Indigenous Leadership Awards at the university. Kayla credits Suntep with allowing her to become educated and to educate others, and to encourage her to reclaim her identity as well as become closer to her family and lost traditions. Education has been a gift and a privilege. We're proud of you, Kayla. Emma Mitchell, Sass Polytech. Emma graduated from Michael A. Riffle High School. Mental health awareness and treatment have been a passion of hers. She has chosen to enroll in the Health Information Management program and would like to pursue a degree in this field when finished her diploma. She has volunteered at a variety of places: the New Line Boxing Club, Santa for Seniors, the Food Bank, and with the Salvation Army. We wish you well, Emma. Maria Ashraf. Maria came to Canada in 2012, not knowing a word of English, working first with basic education, then adult education, then finishing grade 12 in 6 months with an 84 average. She was ready to go to university. However, she received some health setbacks, but found that the nurses who cared for her were role models, and she has decided to pursue nursing. Maria speaks 4 languages and uses those as she volunteers for the Regina Open Door Society. Last year, she became a Canadian citizen. Because of the diversity and beauty of Canada, Maria is going to make Saskatchewan her long-time home. Thanks for choosing us. Ria Paulus. Ria has finished her first year of interactive design and technology and received a scholarship for having the highest finishing GPA in the program. She wants to pursue the technology specialty of back-end web development and is considering a future degree in computer science. Ria has offered her talents for the web design for a school called Prairie Sky. As a former artist, she would also like to assist with the Cathedral Arts Festival. Good luck, Ria. We'll make sure that she gets one if it's not right there. Ria Paulus. Yeah, no. There we go. From the University of Regina, Alyssa Hoffert. This graduate of Miller Comprehensive High School has been an athlete in high school, competing in basketball and team handball, focusing on team handball as she competed locally, provincially, and nationally. She has volunteered in her church parish with kids and sacrament programming and volunteered for the Queen City Marathon. Her goal is to gain a degree in medicine and serve as a trauma surgeon. We wish you well, Alyssa. Avery Top. From Tom Collegiate, I present Avery. She started off considering her career as a vet, volunteering at a vet clinic. She followed it up by also spending time helping in a martial arts school as well as within her church. She was elected, to her student representative council. The notion of medicine always has stayed with her. She's enrolled in a bilingual, collaborative nursing program with a desire to become a family physician one day. You'll do well, Avery. Faraz Khan. This graduate of Campbell Collegiate got involved in Campbell's Social Justice Club. The We Scare Hunger program benefited the whole community. This also led to time with Amnesty International, creating a strong desire to help others. His chosen path will include a degree in biology, followed by a medical career. He wants to stay in Saskatchewan, attend medical school in the province, and conduct research in Saskatchewan. A very noble path, sir. Brianna Convots. You may note through this introduction that this woman seems to like science. She has spent time volunteering at places such as Souls Harbor, Hope's Home, and the Food Bank. But her love may fall to the Regina Fan Expo with a little youth soccer mixed in. She is currently pursuing an honors degree in physics. She intends to continue to achieve a master's degree in either engineering or astrophysics, as well as gain a certificate in French as a second language. When complete, she will apply to the Canadian Space Agency with both SpaceX and NASA as backups. This is a young lady to watch. Annalise Beck-McKenzie. This second-year student is working towards a degree in biology with a desire to pursue a career in pediatric and community medicine. From a family of strong environmental role models, Annalise has volunteered extensively, including Engineers Without Borders, within her church as an accompanist and peer chaplain, as well as within the Regina General Hospital Pediatric Ward. She has a grade 10 in piano, can sing, and has added painting to her skills. Thanks for your volunteer efforts. Andy Chernoff. Volunteerism such as Run for the Cure, Best Buddies, CNIB summer camps, General Hospital Pediatric Ward, assisting with the Regina Immigrant Women's Program are but a few of her causes. This fourth-year student received the U of R University Medal as holding the highest academic average on campus. This all leads well into her chosen career, to be an obstetrics, gynecology professional, owning her own clinic to provide outstanding care for women. We can only wish you continued success. Aubrey Hauk. This skilled athlete in both softball and ringette has continued to compete in the Ladies Softball League. Music, including vocal, piano, and guitar, have opened the door so that she can perform and help at Chippendale Homes in a program called Movement and Music for the Residents. She spearheaded a drive called Shoe Drive to the Net, allowing some 100 inner-city kids to have decent shoes to play basketball. And she has a part-time job in a restaurant. She is currently enrolled in the Paul J. Hill School of Business, and I think your grandpa's proud about that softball stuff. Good luck. Tasana Pan. Our next candidate wants to solve real-world issues using modeling to solve environmental issues in particular. One research topic is regarding the groundwater quality in the Condi Aquifer near the Regina landfill. She was also working on research regarding waste management and diversion in Canada. Perhaps you should stay for something we're going to talk about a little later tonight. Two very relevant topics for our community. In the past, she has studied in southern China. She worked with people with leprosy and aided the senior population, doing things such as bringing food and fixing electronics, bringing festivals to the aged to make them part of the community. Noble efforts in volunteering and research. Thanks for choosing our university and our community. I'm not sure if the next young man is here, Robert McCafferty, but I'd like to introduce you to him. Robert received his undergraduate degree from the U of S, his master's from the University of Wisconsin, and is now enrolled in a PhD program at our community. He has extensive volunteer efforts, including the Open Door Society, Church, Red Cross, Project Jumpstart, and the U of R Cougar soccer team. He received the Distinguished Graduate Student Award from the U of R. His work focuses on exercise adherence, specifically working towards the general community to commit to a healthy lifestyle and get individuals active. He also manages to be part of the youth camp programs in and around Regina. That's Robert McCaffrey. Patrick Burnett. Patrick has shown a great deal of perseverance. A graduate of Mount Royal University, Patrick is a Master of Science student studying the effects of exercise on aging muscle performance. He has been repeatedly on the President's Honor Roll, led a mental health initiative called Let's Talk, that's based on Bell's Let's Talk Day, and even worked with the CFL Combine testing camp. Because Patrick wants to challenge the status quo, he has earned the Saskatchewan Innovation and Excellence Award this year. I am told, and he's right in front of me here, that many seniors love you. Well done, young man. And I know the last gentleman is not here, but I'd like to introduce him as well. Marcus Beveridge. He graduated from the Manitoba College of Social Work and was class valedictorian. He has spent a year volunteering with the Salvation Army in Germany and continues to volunteer with the Army biweekly. Already a member of a professional organization, Marcus wishes to gain a Master of Social Work and eventually a PhD, which would allow him to teach in the field. Instead of the usual intervention type of social work, his research, preferably with and for school children, would be focused on prevention, including early identification and coordinated response. That's Marcus Beveridge. I have a few other folks that I'd like to introduce, and these are the people that are on the selection committee. We have a gift that the universities and the institutions that offer post-secondary actually engage with us so that we can select. And I think, just my opinion, we've selected some rather outstanding folks tonight. So I'd like to introduce and ask that they come down and join us if they're here. Candace Capo from First Nations University, Jeanette Gemmel from Western College of Remedial Massage, Amy Briley from Gabriel Dumont, Amy Wall, who I know is here from SSIT, Paula Leekman from Sask Poly, Karen Brown from the U of R, Darlene Sorensen from the U of R, Tony Petrulis, Jim Nickel, and that's our committee. And we're going to do a team photo. Folks, would you mind? One more clap for all of these good people.
Or an industrial design, sorry. Or industrial. But the design is yeah. I don't know. If you want to turn it into strictly industrial.
Looking good? Like to take myself on to the next slide?
$1,000. Thanks. He's applied for all kinds of stuff. He's on the news list. He's been 85% of but he doesn't, there's nothing issue. One more year left. School, 2 years in Saskatoon.
Connecting now, that's the plus. All right. All right, everyone looking this way. Big, bright, happy smiles. Wonderful occasion. Congratulations to you all, I get to say that. You're in charge right now. Okay. Everybody see me clearly, just in the back. Yes. Up more? I think that looks really good. Unless you know what? Home did quite nicely. I just wanted to some are holding their certificates, others are not. I don't know if we could even just give a couple more moments here. We could have it so they were all holding their certificates the same way, and that would be just up a little bit higher. Yeah, oh, yes. Yes, so maybe not too high, but just certain. That looks good. All right. Now we have all the certificates. Where's your certificate? Did you trade places from City Council? You ready? Good. And last one. Perfect. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Donnell, for that. Congratulations again to all the award recipients. Very worthy of that, some outstanding people. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda with amendments from the clerk's office?
Thank you. I'll move that.
Thank you, Councilor Bryce. The seconder, please. Councilor Bresciani. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the minutes from the August 27th meeting of City Council. I have someone to move that, please. Councilor Young. The seconder, please. Councilor Hawkins. Any errors, omissions, or comments on the minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Also, we'll just wait a moment for the gallery to clear, then we'll continue on with the delegations and public notice bylaws and related reports. Thank you for attending, everyone. Nice to have a happy gallery every once in a while. Yeah. It's my job.
Sorry.
Excellent. I guess we'll continue on now with the first report we have on order of business is Report 18-35, Finance Administration Committee and Alley Maintenance Program. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This is a recommendation from the Finance and Administration Committee that the City Solicitor be instructed to prepare the 2019 Alley Maintenance Special Tax Bylaw, which includes the following levies, proposed revenues, and estimated costs, and they're listed there in the motion. The good news here, Your Worship, is that there is no proposed increase for the 2019 Alley Maintenance Program. I should get a seconder.
Yes, seconder for that, please. Councillor Young.
Thank you. I have only one comment to make, that this is part of a 30-year program to maintain our paved and our gravel alleys. It's on track. We have a deferred revenue. There is no reason to increase the fees for this year. And I just note that based on the last 5 years average of reconstruction of 5.7 kilometers per year of paved alleys, 5.7 of paved alleys, and refreshing 13.4 kilometers per year of gravel alleys.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you,
Hawkins. There are questions on this. Councillor Flagel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for this report too. And questioning, there's no increase in this. Are we going to see a different type of service provided? The reason I ask that is because, my question would be about, is this included in the alley cleaning, where we street cleaning, or is this a separate just repair?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, the fees that are collected through this levy cover activities such as tree pruning, sweeping, snow removal, refresh of the regrading of the gravel alleys, pothole patching, and then all of the capital renewal that Councillor Hawkins just mentioned.
Okay, so it does include the street sweep, or the sweeping up. Okay. The other thing is, if a resident or a neighborhood wants to have an alley paved, do we have money, funds available that we would change a gravel to an asphalt, change their levy purchase, obviously, from $280 to $398, and then carry on, or would we do a lane improvement tax? I don't know. Is there a way that we can have residents come to the city and say, hey, we have 25 out of 35 people that want paved alley, now what?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, we currently don't have a program to change or offer residents to petition to have their alleys changed from a gravel alley to a paved alley.
Okay. Okay, I was just wondered that, so that might be something to look at down the road. So that was all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Bryce?
Thank you. I just wanted to to make sure everybody was aware, this is a full cost recovery. The city makes no money out of it. If it costs $100 to do this, we charge $100 to do that. So it's not a moneymaker for the city. It's only a cost recovery for that specific work that's done in those alleys. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. So in regards to the alleys that have a pathway, they look like they do have a trail, or had some, at some time there was maybe some gravel there, but now it's more grass, and it's, I noticed it when it was raining, and I saw some vehicles try to go down the alley. So would those also have a levy in this, or are those treated differently?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, what you're referring to is actually an easement, and it's used mostly for utility access. It is not covered under this program, and those residents do not pay into this program.
Perfect. Good. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Just a clarification on a point made by Councillor Hawkins. 5.7 kilometers, that's the number of the distance of alleys each year that are paved, is that correct?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, the 5.7 refers to the paved alleys that are receive a rehabilitation in a year. And there is about 13.4 kilometers on average of gravel alleys that are also refreshed each year.
Okay, thank you. So how many kilometers of alleys do we newly pave on an annual basis? And secondly, how is that determined?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, that's at 5.7 kilometers. Those are what get a new pavement surface. We do them based on a condition basis, and we average a 30-year cycle for renewing the paved alleys.
Great, thank you. A question about, or point of clarification actually, about the pruning of trees in the alley. Does that just include city trees, or would these be trees on private property?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, these would be trees that are likely on private property but start to impede into the alley and affect operations such as garbage collection.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Murray.
Thanks. I couldn't quite find in the report, so 134 kilometers total of gravel alleyways in the city. Is that correct?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I'll just double check with Mr. Kyle if that's correct. Or Mr. Bien.
Yeah. Through your worship, yes, there's 134 kilometers of gravel alleys.
Thanks. With the current paved, the 30-year cycle of reconstruction, is that to change them to becoming paved?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, no, that is repaving or rebuilding currently paved alleys.
Okay. In this plan, is there a plan to eventually replace all of the gravel alleys to become paved?
Through your
Ms.
worship,
Gizmo?
no, there's not.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. No other questions on the report? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have two delegations this evening related to a contract zone application for a proposed religious institution. The first delegation is Darcy Schenk. Mr. Schenk, if you could come forward, identify yourself, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and members of council may have questions afterwards.
Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am Darcy Schenk, President of the Austrian-Canadian Edelweiss Club of Regina, and I am here to support Regina Victory's church bid for rezoning the property presently owned by the Austrian Club. Both the Austrian Club and Victory Church are an assembly of people in service to the community, one cultural and one religious. Since the 1980s, we have found little to no disruption to the area we inhabit because of our activities, which took place in hours that did not conflict with the business activities or traffic in the area. We believe that Victory Church's activities would fall into similar hours that would not conflict with surrounding area or businesses. Victory Church would be an asset to the area and would in no way cause any changes that are presently there now. Repurposing this unique public assembly building in a light industrial zone, converting it to a church, is a unique one-off application, not creating a precedent. Changing to facilitate a church would cause little less stress on the neighborhood and infrastructure than the club licensed by Sask Liquor for 509 people. The Victory Church has outgrown its current facility and parking. The parking lot at the club is 4 times larger than its current lot and street parking is virtually unlimited. The club is 1/4 of a block from a city bus stop. As Victory Church owns 2 small buses, the need for parking would be lessened. We believe that the members of the Victory Church are of sound character and will be good neighbors and will at all times be respectful and will work to be an important part of the business community. Regina Victory Church has a sound business model, including funding that will ensure that the church will occupy this space long into the future. We would ask that City Council give Regina Victory Church the approval to rezone, purchase, and thereby own the property presently owned by the Austrian-Canadian Edelweiss Club of Regina. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schenk, for your presentation. Other questions of members of council? Very straightforward, very clear. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. Our next delegation is Terry Murphy. Good evening, Mr. Murphy. If you could identify yourself for the record as well, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation as well, and there may be questions from members of council afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Terry Murphy. I'm the senior pastor of the Regina Victory Church, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the council. And there's a very nice spirit in here with all of those students, and it was nice to be a part of that. I want to thank the city administration, especially Michael Silva, who worked really hard to help us through this process, and also the Planning Commission, who thoughtfully looked at our application and made a recommendation for it, and we're grateful for that. I wanted to just address a few of the concerns that were brought up by the administration earlier and just touch on them. And I've given you a presentation, so I'm not going to bore you with every word in there. You can read that, I'm sure. But the permitted use in the light industrial areas for cultural clubs, and it's hard to understand why it would be so much different for a church group to be in there. We really are a cultural club of a different type, but even the official community plan of Regina equates these two groups. I won't bore you again with where that is, but they equate them as being cultural resources, and so they're very, very similar. And I think that the differentiation between them is kind of arbitrary. And the second thing is a concern about diminishing the amount of light industrial area in the city. Well, since the formation of the Ross Industrial Park, this lot has been allotted to a community gathering place. It's never been light industrial area, so there will be no loss. In fact, if it's not recommended, there will be a loss to public gathering places in the city. The concern Mr. Schenk has already addressed about setting a precedent. This is kind of a one-off. There's not a lot of cultural places in light industrial areas to be converted to churches, so it's not going to create very much of a precedent. Parking has been addressed, and we fall right within the city guidelines for that. And again, the previous owners had a club in there that had a license for 509 people. We won't have that many people, and they never had any trouble. The city made a decision last year to allow a religious institution into a different light industrial area, the Tuxedo Park, and Mayor Fougier is quoted as saying this was a wonderful decision to make. So I just kind of popped that out there. And so what's special about Tuxedo Park? Why is it somehow applicable? And well, I suggest that the only reason that was Tuxedo Park is that's where they found the warehouse that they wanted to convert, and the building that we want to convert to a church happens to be in the Ross industrial area. So I don't see that as a big problem. One of the other things in the OCP policy is to permit supporting services within a light industrial area. And I suggest that all the programs and things that a church offers will offer services to the light industrial area that simply aren't available in any other way. And in changing from a cultural club that meets the needs of one particular cultural group to a church which is welcome to any particular group can come in there, I see that as a broadening of the services. There's also complete acceptance in the area, not one negative response as to this conversion. So I see that as a positive thing as well. And also, you know, this is my logic here, but I think it's a rational, logical common sense decision to allow a public assembly building to be simply repurposed to another public assembly building. It's not much of a stretch. And then finally, humanitarian reasons. There's hundreds of people in our congregation eagerly awaiting this. There's the whole Austrian community wants to move on to their next level. And there's another church praying actively that we'd be successful in this so they could move into our old facility. So with that, I'll leave it, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. See if there's any questions from members of council. There are none. You've been very clear in your presentation as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can return to the gallery, and this is now the contract zone application for proposed business institution at 320 Maxwell Crescent. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you very much. May I have a seconder, please?
Seconder, please.
So not very often do we come before you from Planning Commission with something that the staff recommended as a denial, and we're actually looking at approval. So it's unique that way. I think you heard from both of the delegations really the logic that we heard at Planning Commission as well, and thought that this made sense. The building is there, public assembly, church would fit in. We saw it working. So we had no issue with this. Would seek your concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Speakers to the report? A reasonable request? Call it, oh, we do. Councillor Fundura. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Worship. I stand in support of this. This is a great thing to see what's happening in front of us. You're looking at helping two communities to move on. And like the delegation mentioned, someone's waiting to move on, someone waiting to move in. I see nothing wrong with this. I came into the Planning Commission to hear what was being said and how it was debated. It was an important thing to see, to witness. This is a witness of community getting together. And even from the church saying there'll be people around the area that will seek some help from the church and all. So I am wholeheartedly in favor of this. So it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundura. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to ask the administration a question in the fact that what makes this different from Ross to Tuxedo Industrial Park?
Ms. Howler.
Through you, Your Worship, the level of industrial and the uses that are in it is what makes it different, because each district has different uses. In the IT, when we allowed for the religious institutions, we were trying to find a compromise to allow religious institutions without degrading our industrial land policy within the OCP, because the industrial lands are the key to our tax base. And so the policy was clear not to rezone property. So we thought the balance would be to allow it in that industrial area, but not to open it up to all industrial areas.
Thank you for that. I too rise in support of this. I think when a church has found its home, we had this conversation not even a year ago with the other church that was looking into Tuxedo Park. It was an industrial area as well. I think industrial changes all the time. And I think we see different facets of industrial in one to the other. So different layers, different type of industrial. But in this situation, we've got a church who wants to move into the area that has indicated they're going to be a good neighbor. They're going to they're going to be working with the community. I struggle sometimes with the fact that when we look at our zoning and we look at our land use, that if it works, sometimes we have to think outside the box. And this is what, tonight when I look at this, I think that we've got someone who's actually going, Austrian Club have indicated that they also need a buyer, and for their own community. So these are times, I think these are the one-offs. So again, I rise in support of this, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Murray.
Thanks. I think when we're generating policy, it's very difficult to create a policy that fits every situation every single time. So for that, I'm very respectful of the administration for attempting to make it work, but sometimes by the technicalities it won't. When we're looking at the Austrian Club, like the delegation had indicated, 500 people was the capacity of that location. I think changing this to the religious institution zoning, I think that's a very acceptable thing to do, and hopefully you can call Ward 6 home. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Marie. Councilor Flagel.
Thanks. Ms. Howard brought up a question I wanted to ask. The way the building is situated today as the Austrian Club, if it flips over to the church, is there an implication of taxes to the city of Regina, plus minus?
Ms. Howard?
Through your worship, religious institutions are tax exempt, so we will lose tax revenue.
And what is that tax revenue today?
Ms. Harlock?
I'm not sure if Mr. Searle has that number. I'm just checking. It's not in the financial due.
Mr. Searle?
No, at this point, we don't have that. We can get that for council, but it is an industrial property, so it would be assessed under the industrial, like under the land uses. We can get you that information, though.
So we could be talking $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 lost revenue to the city of Regina?
Ms. Harlock?
And we're going to have to decide on that now?
Through you, your worship, it's something that we would need our assessment department to run the numbers to know what the tax, what they were paying for taxes for that property would be.
Yeah. That's my only concern, is when you mentioned what you just said, and now we're debating, we don't know what the answer is, and we're going to make a decision, and we could cost the taxpayers $20,000. I don't know what it is. I'm guessing at 20, but I'm not sure how to proceed with this, because...
Well, I guess I'm asking, what would you think of doing, Councilor Flagel? I don't know if they say they have the... Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, we're just trying to log in. We can go upstairs if you would like to. We can have the answer later.
You have the answer?
Yes, I Googled it on the City of Regina website based on the property. Total taxes for 2018 were $9,654.03. For 2017, it was $9,493.42.
That's pretty accurate. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
$9,000, $10,000 roughly. Okay. Okay. That's my only sour point on this. And I was going to see if maybe the gentleman from the Austrian Club had the same numbers, but thanks, Councilor Rice. Appreciate it. I'm not so sure that maybe is that part of the reason why, as well, the administration backed down a little bit and said we can't do it this way, or is that nothing to do with it? The factor of losing 10 grand?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, it wasn't about the dollar amount. It was about losing, because our OCP policy does talk about the degradation of rezoning our industrial lands to different land use categories. That was the basis, because as we lose lands that are zoned industrial, then we do have that implication for our employment lands. So that is why we recommended it, because of that policy within the OCP.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm just, I don't know if there's anything that we can do at this point to look at that. If planning has decided, I don't think it's a bad idea to be where they're doing it, but I don't like the idea of taking $10,000 out of our revenue, and we've depleted services from other centers, and now we're going to lose 10 grand, which could be another 10 grand, could be another 10, I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Councilor Flagel. Councilor Bryce?
Thank you. So I look at it slightly different. I think that this is not being used as industrial right now, currently, and a church is a good fit for it. So I'm good with that. I also think that this church is looking for a new home. So whether it be here or somewhere else, we won't be able to collect that tax dollar from wherever they move, in whichever area of the city. So we wouldn't be able to collect it from here either. So to me, that rationalizes it, that it would be a good fit. You're not going to have people who are complaining about parking or anything like that with this. I do believe whenever they have rentable space, that may be something that is taxable, for example, if they do rent it out to a daycare or something like that, so or to food services or whatever. So I'm comfortable with this, because it doesn't matter where they go. They won't be paying taxes in another lot in the city somewhere anyways. So I think it's a good fit, and it's good to have them in the community.
Thank you, Councilor Bryce. No other speakers. I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next report is an application for the sale of dedication of land at 580 Quebec Street. Councillor O'Donnell.
May I have a seconder, please?
Second for it. Councillor Massanelli.
Thank you. So this is an area that really can only be accessed off of an alley. And really, if you want to get at the property, actually you have to come through the existing landowner to get to the back of this. So it is, the proponent is the City of Regina. We see this as extra land, see this as being a boon to the people who are living adjacent. There will be no buildings built on here. I see no reason not to sell this. Seek concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other speakers to the report? I have one, and I'm just wondering what the sale price is for the property. Ms. Harlick?
Through you, Your Worship, I'd ask Mr. Lacey, he would have that information.
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Your Worship, negotiations have not yet been completed with this prospective purchaser of the land, so there's not a specific price we have today.
You notify council when that's completed?
You can do that,
Thank
yes.
you very much. No other speakers. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have 3 bylaws. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Mancinelli, the bylaws 2018 47, 48, and 51 be introduced and read a first time.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council has completed its review of the associated reports and will now consider the following bylaws which have required public notice. 218-47, respecting the proposed rezoning to enable the use of an existing property for a religious institution which is not currently permitted in an industrial zone. 218-48, respecting proposed rezoning to ensure consistent zoning within an adjacent parcel on the 500 block of Quebec Street. And 218-51, respecting a special tax to raise money for alley maintenance. If there's anyone in the gallery this evening who wishes to address council on any of these, I would ask you to indicate your interest at this time. There appears to be no one, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll call the question on first reading. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Bryce, the bylaws 2018 47, 48, and 51 be read a second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Your Worship, I move, seconded by Councillor Stevens, that Council hereby consents to bylaws 2018 47, 48, and 51 going to third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Murray, that bylaws 2018 47, 48, and 51 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Move on to delegation and related reports. One delegation, Tracy Fallman, concerning short-term rentals. Good evening, Ms. Fallman. You've been here before. You know the role here. It's you identify yourself for the record who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and members of council may have questions for you afterwards.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Your Worship, members of City Council. My name is Tracy Fallman. I'm the President and CEO of the Regina Hotel Association. I'm here tonight on behalf of 23 hotel members to provide our perspective on this application and the acute need for a modern regulatory framework for short-term home rentals. To be clear, the RHA is not opposed to true home sharing, where a homeowner rents out a room occasionally in their primary residence to generate extra income. We further appreciate the original intent of the city's residential homestay regulations that was enacted in 2013. However, what started as a true home sharing trend has now expanded into entire homes being operated as commercial accommodation businesses in our neighborhoods. Taking a sample from a popular online home sharing platform, Airbnb, shows that over 50% of their 240 listings in Regina are entire home rentals, where we anticipate that the homeowner is not present. The short-term home rental industry in Regina has grown by over 30% in just the past year alone and operates within limited regulations. Online platforms are being used to operate commercial accommodation businesses, resulting in unintended consequences across our city most indeed across our country, including lost taxes, less housing, community nuisances, and even criminal behavior. The short-term rental industry should not be exempt from the rules and regulations designed to build strong local economies, successful communities, and to keep travelers safe. While hotels welcome competition, it must be on a level playing field. The application before you is for a short-term commercial accommodation operation, and we ask that it be treated as such. The RHA is encouraged by City Administration's recommendation that the property located at 3300 Albert Street may be subject to commercial assessment as determined by the City Assessor. We support the City moving in this direction. We further recognize that the applicant has fully abided by all the current bylaws, and the RHA will support the City's decision on this specific application. However, moving forward, we are formally requesting City Council to direct City Administration to put in place a modern regulatory framework for future applicants, one that will level the playing field for all those operating in the commercial accommodation industry and to support those with an interest in affordable housing and safe communities. In closing, we appreciate that governments at all levels are struggling with the implications of a growing short-term rental industry and online platforms like Airbnb operating in their cities. Your support to create a regulatory environment that acknowledges the difference between true home sharing and a commercial operation with fair rules for all would be appreciated. Our industry is committed to working alongside governments at all levels to help develop fair and practical approach to the short-term rental industry. And I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Fallon, for your presentation. There are questions. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Fallon, for coming tonight to bring us your report. I read the document that you gave us, and it was very, very informative. Are you aware of the issue we had several years ago when we had an expansive growth of rooming houses and 30-day motels in houses? Okay. Did you have anything to say to the city at that time?
Through you, Your Worship. Back in, that would have been in 2013, 2012, 2013, and as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, we completely understand the intent of the current bylaws, or the current regulations that the way they are. Since 2013, we've seen a burst in the short-term rental industry. 2013, what our data has shown us is we had about 10 units that were being rented out on Airbnb back in 2013. Now there's 240 listings 5 years later. And so times have changed and the digital economy is here. Home sharing is okay, and we are not expecting it to go away. What we're looking for is just fair rules for all those playing in the commercial accommodation industry.
So what has this 240 Airbnbs that are online now, what has that done to the hotel industry? Has that affected you?
Through you, Your Worship. We have, in the last couple of years, the hotel industry has absolutely seen some changes. But we can't just say that it's been Airbnb and short rentals that has impacted our industry. Back in 2013-14, we were operating about 66% with occupancy rate, and we had rates at about $133 back then. Today, we are operating at maybe 50%, and our rates are around $119. So it has had an impact. But competition is good. Competition is okay, as long as it's on a level playing field. We don't anticipate that the home sharing economy will leave, or that it's going to stay. We are just requesting fair rules for all of those operating in the commercial accommodation industry.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. You have a page with a roadmap to what we would have to do. And so one of the things would be to review the policies we have now. But the third thing is consultation. So would you be open to being a leader in having consultation, public consultation with the industries that are affected by this?
Through you, Your Worship, it would be my pleasure.
Okay. And then the fourth one is applying regulatory tools, and we had trouble considering that in 2013 because of the cost and because we didn't have the software to be able to license. We are going to have the software in this year's budget. So, so I guess my question for you is, because of the cost of putting regulatory tools in place and the enforcement that would bring, I am wondering if the Hotel Association would be interested in applying a 1 or 2% hotel tax in the city that would be devoted simply to regulating that industry that's creating the problem.
Through you, Your Worship, I think that is something that we could consider. One of the things that you'll find in that white paper, the document that we did provide, put forward, is requiring that any property that is offered on a short-term rental be registered with the city and to pay fees to help with those regulatory things. So to pay an industry that you're doing business in. What we're finding too is a scan of cities across Canada and some of the regulatory approaches that they've done, as well as how they're funding their enforcement and their regulations, is that they are regulating the platform. And where the platform is paying as well a substantial fee, they are also I believe it is in Toronto, that they're working with Airbnb to pay, I believe it's a $5,000 annual fee and $1 per booking. And the purpose is to help with the regulation and to fund those things. And we'd be happy to explore those types of opportunities.
Thank you. We would be happy to work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Doesn't appear to be any other questions. Ms. Fallon, you can return to the gallery, and we'll now look at Planning Commission report on residential homestays at 3300 Albert Street. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you. May I have a seconder, please?
Second for it. Councillor Hawkins.
Thanks very much. So we have, by the way, the gentleman who is the proponent here was at Planning Commission, just as Ms. Fulman was, and we were able to quiz him. What we found was that the gentleman, and acknowledged by the hotel industry, followed everything he was supposed to do based on our current regulations. And so it's pretty hard to say to someone, well, you did everything you should do. Okay, so hands kind of went up. But I think the notion that the hotel industry is requesting is really a different part of this debate and things that we could do. So in terms of Planning Commission, we are recommending concurrence. Felt the fellow did his due diligence, and we don't have any problem with that. And I'll stop at that point.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to call people's attention to the fact that we've had this bylaw on the books since 2013, and this is the first person to come forward under this bylaw, which is telling us that the bylaw is not working as it should. And so we thank him for coming forward, because that's something that a lot of other people have not done.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Bryce.
Councillor Flegel brought up a good point in the last delegation that was here prior about taxation. So how does our taxation change if this property changes to pure commercial? Through you.
Ms. Howard?
Through your worship, so the assessor will assess the property on an individual basis based on what the use is. Just for clarity, it's not entirely commercial. They still use it for residential purposes themselves. They indicated that at the RPC meeting. So the assessor will come in, but if the primary use is residential, then it will be assessed. So each application that would come forward would be assessed on its own merits and then as per the assessment rules.
Thank you. I noticed in the report there's lots of things that they've gone through, like fire zoning, all that kind of stuff. Sorry, my computer just kind of flipped through it. Did that cost us any money as a city to actually go out and do all these extra inspections and the like? And how do we get our money back from that? Through you, Your Worship.
Through your worship, I might start and then ask if there's anything different, but at this point, we circulate the application to the different areas, and then at time of building permit, if they're doing modifications, then it would be through that. But at this point, I don't believe there's been any inspections. No, there has been no inspections at this point, just our regular circulation for comments to our different stakeholder groups that we circulate applications to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. So if I wanted to use Airbnb to rent out my house and I wanted to do this all above board, is this the process that a resident would have to follow?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, that is correct. They would need to get a permit to operate legally as a residential house.
And for clarification, this is the only application that we have ever seen since this was
Ms. Harlock?
reviewed.
That is correct.
So considering that we know that there's a platform, there's Airbnb, there's other sources, how do we respond as a city through bylaw enforcement when we can clearly identify individual properties that are in violation of this particular bylaw, through your worship?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, I'll start, and then I might turn it over to Mr. Onrait, who's in charge of enforcement. But what it is when we receive complaints based on someone operating, then there is an investigation that is completed to determine whether or not there is compliance or non-compliance. And that's the process that we would go with. When this all first came up, as Councillor Young had indicated, there was a strong process that we undertook because of the number of complaints. In the end, there was only a few that actually came forward with actual, that were actually illegal. But I might ask if Mr. Onrait or the fire chief has
Mr.
anything
Onrait?
else to add.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So Ms. Howard is right. If the complaint comes through, we need to send somebody from fire bylaw. They will go out and inspect the property. If it was regarding a parking issue around the property, we would send parking enforcement. I'll maybe ask the chief to comment on the home itself and whether or not they can have entry into the house and how that works.
Thank you.
Chief Jackson?
Through you, your worship. Indeed, we will go out on site and investigate. The difficulty with these type of cases is gathering enough evidence to determine that they are indeed a operation going on. So when we do go, we ask for consent to inspect and investigate, and whether they are operating one, and if they indicate that they're not, then that becomes the problem in trying to collect enough evidence to prove that they are indeed operating that type of rental occupancy.
Thank you very much. Through the Zone Forward process, are we naturally going to take a second look at this particular bylaw, but more generally looking at homes or home sharing and Airbnb type accommodations?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, so we are undertaking the Zone Forward projects, which may result in amendments. The bylaw, that was the bylaw amendments that were brought forward in 2013 were based on a lot of research and best practices. When we're talking about this in general with Airbnb and those sorts of things, it really comes down to with some of those that are on Airbnb, for example, as Ms. Fallman had indicated, some municipalities will require a business license, which will then be tied back to the website, and then they're not allowed to actually put their ad up without a licensing or a valid license. So I think from a bylaw perspective, it meets the needs of the bylaw. It's more the other end of getting people to comply.
Thank you. Through the chair, some questions about some of the elements in this particular report and recommendation. If we look at the citizen engagement, not all that hefty, but there were 6 opposed, which is kind of the majority. How do we weight that in this consideration? And finally, if administration could find some clarification, why was prostitution listed as a concern for this homestay application? This one was really off the wall, and it makes no sense to me.
Ms. Hawryluk?
Through your worship, as it's shown on Appendix B, we're just summarizing what the public put forward.
Right.
So there was a concern that they felt that people were having that use there. But as you can see in Appendix B, the way administration looks at it is we take the feedback and then we analyze it against the facts, like with regards to parking. We look at the bylaw and what's required, and based on that, they had the amount of parking that was required and those sorts of things. So we weigh all of the comments against our regulations and then make a recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Murray?
Thanks. So the issue around regulating short-term is not a new problem. This is a problem that's existed in lots of cities across North America, the world. Are there industry best practices around options other than just complaint-driven? Because the vast majority, I would imagine, of people that utilize the service do it in a way that no complaint would happen. I'm talking about something like an incentive and on the positive side of things. Is there anything like that with industry disruptors similar to this for best practices?
Ms. Hawryluk?
I'm thinking the idea of possibly you'd have a list of addresses that are registered with the city, for instance, that the public would be made aware of and people could use it that way.
Yep.
Ms. Hawryluk?
Through you, your worships, that's definitely something that's could be an option, that they would be listed in that. As I said, other cities have been looking at, they have more robust business licensing regimes that make it easier to regulate because, as I said before, is they can't actually put their ads on and cannot generate business without that business licensing. So there is those options. We haven't really explored an incentive program per se.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Ms. Dawson or Mr. Searle have in their research found any incentives. No, not at this point. But I definitely, that would be something that the city could do, as I know other cities have done that when it is a registered business that's approved, then there's a registry that people can go to.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Bershani?
Thank you, Worship. So the question I have is just in regards to, if we know these Airbnbs are out there, they're advertising, what is preventing the city from actually following up, answering the ad, and then asking the questions as to, you know, there's a permit that's needed for this, that kind of thing?
Ms. Hawryluk?
It's just, through your worship, I might defer that to the chief. I could start though by saying we did do some of that at the beginning. It's about resources and how much resources that we can put towards it. But I would defer it to Mr. Onright or to the fire chief.
Mr. Onright?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hawryluk is right. To do preventive enforcement on this, it takes a large amount of resources. So it is complaint driven right now, so it could be in the study, and if I remember correctly, in 2013 when this was done, most of the complaints were around parking and lack of in the neighborhood, and the homes that were being used as homestay or rental properties in the university area. The biggest complaint was around parking. There was concern around, inside the home, whether it had the correct building permits, which we would take into consideration through our fire bylaw to ensure the properties were safe. But it does consume a large amount of time.
Thank you for that. So I think the question comes back to complaint driven. It really makes it tough when it's complaint driven, because I know I've had residents that have reached out and said, this is going on. It's labor intensive. I understand that because things change, but if we nip it in the bud at the beginning when there's the ad there already on Airbnb and they know they're advertising, we're taking it from more of a proactive than a reactive. That might be something to consider if we really want to make this permit forward and we want them to have a permit. I'll leave it there. I know resources are always tough, but we have these in place for a reason, and I think either we decide that we use them or we don't. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bershani. Councillor Flagel.
Thank you. And just a couple of things to Ms. Fallman's comments. Was 240 listings, so about 120 are running a business more than, I think what she said was not occupied by the owner. So if, from a taxation, from a bylaw, from a licensing point of view, if I want to open up our Airbnb with one room and I come to the city, what's it going to cost me? For a license, for fees, or, okay, I'll just ask that question first. So I want to apply to be an Airbnb person.
Ms. Howlett?
Through your worship, you'll have to go through the development permit process.
Sure.
I'll ask Mr. Searle to give the costing for development permit.
Mr. Searle?
Your worship, the fee would be $2,500 for the discretionary use application.
Okay, thank you. So if I then decided after that I want to turn it into 5 rooms and not live in it, as it says about half of those are, is there another cost involved for me to do that?
Ms. Howlett?
Through your worship, no, there isn't. The only thing is there is a limitation on the number of rooms to 4, I believe.
Is it 4? Okay. As long as I'm not in the, can I have 4 and live in it? Or is it 4 when I'm not there? Ms. Howlett?
It's residential homestays cannot have more than 4 bedrooms used to provide short-term accommodations.
Okay. So I think what we're trying to get at here is that there's an unfairness, and I have heard appetite, and I don't think I've seen anybody bring it forward. Are we going to review this with the Hotels Association and council and our people, or is this just going to be left alone and not anything done? Because I haven't heard anybody say anything that we're going to look into this further to maybe address some of the concerns that the Hotels Association is bringing forward.
Ms. Howlett?
Through you, your worship. So at this point in time, as I indicated, from the taxation perspective, the assessors will go in and they will assess the property according to the assessment rules. So that's taken care of on that side. From the zoning perspective, unless council directs otherwise, I think the zoning bylaw is meeting the needs of that. I think really what Ms. Fallman has indicated and what we've talked about is really whether or not council wants us to explore a licensing regime with respect to this land use specifically, which would tie back to, as I indicated, other municipalities, work with Airbnb so that people cannot put an ad on that without getting their business license. So then it would be a requirement that way. So again, it's at this point it would need to be, I believe, direction from council to undertake that work.
So you would need something official from us in order to move forward on that? Is that what I'm hearing?
Ms. Howlett?
That is correct, yes.
I'd like to make that motion that we look at a conversation with the interested industries to take a look at fairness. And I mean,
Councillor Flagel, this would be for a licensing regime? Is that what you're saying, or just?
Yeah. Well,
Just to
according to
make it
what Ms.
clear.
Howard just went by, saying that they would open up discussions and have them with, I don't know her exact words.
So we'll just try to get some wording up on the screen. To consult with the industry, including the Hotel Association.
It sounds like Ms. Sauerlach knows what she wants or could do, and I think it has to come from us in order for it to be official.
Homestays, for homestay. Homestay.
Mr. Mayor, I think Mr. Onradt has something he'd like to add.
Mr. Onraght, do you want to end the discussion as we're waiting for this? Floor is
Through
yours.
your worship. So Ms. Howrluck's area is involved in the zoning portion.
Right.
Our area would be involved if there was a licensing regime brought in and the work that would be associated with that. So I would ask through this motion that it would come forward towards the end of 2019, so fourth quarter of 2019, to bring the work back to council for consideration.
Yeah. I think the reason I'm bringing this forward, I think this is going to be something that's going to grow even more, and we need to make sure we're doing the right thing.
So once we get the amendment down, I'll ask for a seconder, and then we'll begin discussion on the amendment.
Okay, I'm good with that, thanks.
Councilor Young is seconding that. So on the amendment, are the speakers to the amendment? Pretty self-evident what this is. Okay. Councilor Perdue, are you speaking on the amendment or the main motion? Okay, Councilor O'Donnell, I see you're up there, so you go ahead. On the amendment only.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm fine. I'm fine in terms of the exploratory notion of what we're doing here. I'm not sure that licensing is the answer. All I'm saying is that I think we need to look at something. So whatever it is, I'd like it to be open to the whatever. And I'm not trying to make this complicated, but I would tell you that I believe that in a few, I don't know, weeks or months, whenever, we're going to talk about something called ride sharing. And I have a feeling that somehow or other the two are related because it works from an app and then how you regulate after that. And so I really don't want to be limited. It's this whole notion of the world has changed and it's now tech-driven, and how do we, in fact, regulate all of that. So while I can support this, I believe that we should add to this when we see that ride sharing so that we have an understanding. I just don't want this limited. If that's understood, then I can be okay.
So, Councilor O'Donnell, just on that notion, and for Councilor Flake, just for clarity, would it be to regulate the industry, including licensing? That would be a broader discussion to have, not just limited to licensing, which I think is a legitimate thing. So, are you okay with the friendly amendment? So it would be to regulate?
And the report would come back on Q4.
Yeah.
Not start. Yeah.
It would be to regulate residential homestay, including licensing. Yeah. No, just explore regulating the. No, don't break that out. No, to explore regulating the residential homestay, including a licensing regime. Including licensing regime. So we're clear on that? Councilor Flake, the friendly amendments, you're okay with that? So just members of council can bear with me for a moment. There are speakers who are lined up for the main motion right now. We're on the amendments, so could I just have a show of hands who want to speak to the amendment? Okay.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I have two concerns. They go along the lines of Councillor O'Donnell's concerns. My understanding is that we don't license businesses at present. And I'm not sure, I can understand that we want to regulate this business. It may be that we want to license or register in some way, but I don't want this motion to be read as a motion that says explore the adoption of a mandatory licensing scheme. I'm a little concerned that the wording of licensing may get us to a place where we may want to go but may not want to go. So I would prefer it if they just consult the industry to explore a regulatory regime and report back, and that would include an exploration of some kind of registration or possibly some kind of registration with a fee, which might be licensing. But I'm a bit nervous about the word licensing. So I propose an amendment to the amendment that just said explore regulating the residential homestay regime and report back so that there's not any implied direction in the motion that the analysis is wide open. That's my...
So before we move to an amendment to the amendment, which would be in order, before I get to that point, Councillor Flega, would you look at a friendly amendment to make it more general in nature and not tag it necessarily to licensing?
Yeah, I'm good with doing that, but you said you don't want licensing in there, but then you said the word licensing in the sentence. But, so I understand where it's coming from, and I totally get that. I just think that if we go too basic, we might miss the point unless administration would undertake it to explore all options. And if that's the case, then I can go with Councillor Hawkins.
I think it's...
I just want to get something to the administration.
Yeah, I agree, and I think licensing would be implied in there.
Yeah.
But if it is explore regulating the industry itself, that's one option they may come back with.
I'm good with leaving the word licensing off. And
okay. So it's a friendly amendment, not an amendment to the amendment. So if we have that, that removed, okay. The regime, I'll take that regime off. Okay. So we're still on the amendment, not the amendment to the amendment. And I don't know the order because I don't want to disrupt the main motion. So
I just have one other very quick point on this. When we consult, I think we should consult the hotel industry, of course, but I think there should also be an effort to consult people who are interested in having Airbnb, so that the consultation should include all possible stakeholders. Thank you, Your Worship.
That's fair enough. Councillor Young.
Of course, am in support of this amendment to the amendment. But I would like to state that when we explored this back in 2013, parking and property maintenance and that kind of thing was a big thing, but also health and safety was big because there were places that didn't have proper egress, and fire was a hazard that we were worried about. So this isn't simple. This is complicated, and it's going to require regulations that allow us to do that kind of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Mr. Onwright, do you have something you want to add to this?
Through your worship, so just for clarification, we do regulate home-based businesses. So we have a business license for home-based businesses. We would agree the wording explore options, which I think to Councillor Young's point, from the Regina Hotel Association talking about taxation as maybe being one of those options, which could be part of this work also.
Thank you for that. Go to Councillor Stevens now on the amendment.
Thank you. I did have a question that hasn't quite been answered here about the definition of industry. So what is the industry when we're talking about this? Historically, when Airbnb and other similar organizations have been consulted, they just fight back and say no regulation. So are we talking about the actual industry leaders, and so we're going up against the Silicon Valley giants? Are we talking about the Hotel Association? So perhaps some clarification on who the industry is.
Perhaps the interested parties might be another way to put it as well.
Sure.
Because it's not just industry in the classical sense. I think it's, Councillor Flake, it's your motion.
Yeah,
you can speak
no,
to that.
I'm fine. I
Interested parties.
just want to get it going. And
okay. I understand that. I mean, through the chair, would that include, I guess, to Councillor Flagel, I'm an interested party. Sure. I want to use Airbnb. Are we talking about public consultation?
Yeah, I would open that up to, if I could, anybody that is interested and has an interest, whether it be hoteliers, Airbnbs, VRBOs, anybody that wants to participate, I would say bring it on, because it's all going to be for the better. And if we can clarify some things, the health and safety issues is another thing. I agree with that too, and that should all be a full discussion because.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, Mr. Holden and I had a correspondence about public consultation. Are we getting into this big smoking bylaw scope of everybody's involved in the conversation? How do you read this, administration?
Mr. City Manager?
So through your worship,
Yeah, we had a conversation earlier this night about public engagement and the extent of engagement. There are times when we bring stakeholders together and have meetings and get thoughts and opinions about a proposal. There's other times when we go to extensive marketing, like we did with the smoking bylaw. So I think in this is more administration going away and having some meetings. So meeting with the Hotels Association, meeting with a group of people that are advertising Airbnb today, maybe meeting with some users of Airbnb. So I'd like to think that this is work that we can do without an extensive public engagement process. This is more about meeting with interested parties, stakeholders, and making sure that we get a wide array of input from those special interests and stakeholders in the community.
Great, thank you.
Before we do this, just interrupt you, I need a seconder for the amendment. Councilor Massanelli, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. When we talk about regulating, we actually currently already have a regulatory mechanism. So what we're saying here is it's insufficient. Is that what administration is reading?
Clearly that's the case. That's why the amendment's here.
Okay, just want to clarify. In terms of how we deal with the outcome, so every industry is going to fight tooth and nail not to have a hotel tax, further regulation and so on, and the consultation comes back and says, no, we don't want any more regulation, we don't want any more taxes. How do we interpret that? Because we need revenue, and they say, no, we don't want it regulated. How do you digest what the industry says in terms of the need for revenue generation, which should be part of this conversation? Through the chair.
Mr. Holden.
So through your worship, it's a question when you ask taxpayers, do you want to see a tax increase? The answer is no. When you ask people that are involved in, selling something, obviously, do you want to pay a business license? The answer is no. I mean, we need to look for a way to further regulate because we do have regulations in place. That's what's in front of us tonight. But really, it doesn't work. We have examples of advertising on websites, Airbnb. So what can we put in place to provide a mechanism to have further control over that so we can more adequately enforce?
Thank you. Final question. We've been down this road before. Given the current constraints of the Cities Act and so on, does this give us the scope to talk about revenue generation or revenue neutral, which is usually the case with fees and so on? Through the chair.
Mr. City Manager.
Through your worship, a licensing regime is about cost recovery. So it's not about a revenue generator. Opportunities to have conversations with the Hotels Association where they put in a voluntary opportunity for a further collection of a tax, much like the Destination Marketing Fund. That's something that the hotels work out with the hotel owners. So there might be an opportunity there. But yeah, we do not have the authority to generate revenue per se through charging licenses or permits.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you for that. Councilor Murray, I believe you may be the last person on the amendment.
Thanks. I'll keep it very quick. For the motion, support of the amendment, please let's just make sure that when folks come to operate Airbnb out of their house, they don't have to come to a council meeting every time to do so. I think this is something that we can figure out. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Councilor Hawkins, can you take the chair, please?
Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I support with reluctance the amendment because and I'm glad we've clarified it more because I'm not interested necessarily in going into a licensing regime, a business license of any kind. I think what we have tonight is Ms. Fallman from the Hotel Association wanting to work with the administration and council to find a way to level the playing field to make this Airbnb and other homestays not have a preferential standing in the community, but a level playing field with hotels. And I support that in general terms. Well, what I don't want to see, by definition, is a licensing regime that could be burdensome, difficult to enforce. Taxes are up. So I look forward to some creativity with the administration and with the industry, with the association, with interested parties to talk about how we can begin to identify who has Airbnb or homestay and have some regulation related to public safety as Councillor Young has mentioned, I think is a critical element here too. So I want to keep it as broad as possible and not focus on having a licensing regime at the top. I don't think that's where I'd want to go as a member of council. So, but I will support the amendment. Thank you. So, Councillor Flanagan, do you want to close debate on the amendment?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, so no other speakers on the amendment? It's up on the screen. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. One last speaker on the main motion as amended. Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, to your worship. This bylaw is complaint driven. So my question would be, how easy is it to get into the house if I complain about someone? If I find something, I stayed in a house or someone knows there's a working smoke detector is not working, there's some things that I think is wrong in the house, and I complain about it. How easy is it for the fire department or for bylaw to get into the building, to the house?
Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, I'll ask Chief Jackson to comment.
Chief Jackson, please.
Through your worship, so on a complaint like that, we would go out on site and investigate, and we'd approach the responsible party and ask for consent to come in and do an inspection. Most times we get that type of consent. If we wouldn't, then we would need to apply for a warrant.
Okay, thank you. And so we had difficulties with this in 2013. So the question back then was, if someone moves in to the house here for one night stay, how do I know, what's the safety, how do I know who's there? Like if you move into the hotel, I have a registry, you have a name, you have a card, all those things. How this is being regulated or controlled, if something happens, how do we fall on, how do we know who's stayed in that house overnight? To your worship.
Mr. Onright?
Worship, so if I can maybe get a little more clarity on if something happens inside the home?
No, let's...
And we're called?
No, so my question is that, is the house has to stay with the regulations like hotel has a registry? Does this house will have a register? So if I move in, I register for 1 day stay, my information is there. Who controls that? So
Sure,
I'm thinking about,
Worship.
this is a residential area, correct? So there's children, there's a whole bunch of stuff. We don't know who's going to stay there.
Through your worship, so today, we wouldn't know that.
Okay.
And we don't know, for the most part, who's operating these.
Okay, so I have difficulties with that. That's we had a problem with that before. Okay, that's good for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundura. Before I call the question, just to see if Councillor Down, you have any comments to close? Okay. Oh, okay, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Hawkins.
Your worship, I want to recall Councillor O'Donnell's comment that the gentleman who owns this house appeared before the Planning Commission. He's a very responsible citizen. He reviewed with people in the neighborhood how they could, if they had any complaints or concerns during anyone who's staying Airbnb at his house. He gave them a means of contacting them. He himself is a doctor in Toronto, married to a woman from Regina. They have a family. They've spent a considerable amount of time in Regina. They own this home so that they can stay there while they're in Regina. He indicated that he doesn't plan to rent out the 3 rooms to 3 different tenants, but he would envisage renting them out to other families or groups in the same circumstances that he is. So I just want to remind council that we're focusing on this one particular case in this situation. And I also want to say that at the Planning Commission, the owner of the home was a very impressive and responsible individual.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins, for that. Councillor O'Donnell to close debate.
Thanks. So I appreciate what Councillor Hawkins said. That's where I was going to begin. And so when we began this, we had a person who was complying, following regulations, and it's before you, and that's where we began. 2, the notion of where we're going to go, and I want to again throw back in the idea of ride sharing and maybe other things. I don't know, but these are app driven. And I want to go back to what Mr. Onright said. There actually is we actually have a way of finding out who actually stays in these houses and who rents the car. Airbnb, Lyft, Uber, they all control that data. The data is what's really important to them. And so we have to kind of sort through that as we go along in life and how this works. May have missed an opportunity inviting Silicon Valley. I thought that was pretty funny, but also, anyway, who knows? Maybe we will. So let's keep an eye on the big picture here. The little picture is that we have a gentleman who complied. I think we should seek concurrence on that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. You closed debate, so there's no further comments on the report. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Move on to finance and administration reports. We have 3 reports. Group employee benefits. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's with some relief that I rise on the more interesting matters in this meeting. Recommendation of Finance and Administration Committee, Employee Group Benefits Request for Proposal, that the Executive Director of the Financial and Corporate Services be delegated the authority to issue a request for proposals for benefit carriers to administer the City of Regina's comprehensive employee benefits package for a term of up to 10 years, that the Employee Benefits Committee be delegated the authority to review the existing employee benefits package and make amendments to the employee benefits subject to the collective bargaining process. 3, that the Executive Director of Financial and Corporate Services be delegated authority to negotiate, award, and enter into and amend contracts with the highest ranked proponent from the public procurement process for a period of up to 10 years with an employee group benefits purchase, that the City Clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreements after review and approval by the City Solicitor. The background to this is this. Our employee benefits plan, which is in good shape, has been carried by 2 providers for 11 of the last 20 years. This is the first time it's been reviewed in this 20 years. There was a suggestion that perhaps it was time for review. An employee benefits committee was set up to review the current state. They indicated that the plan had many strong aspects, but there were some areas in which improvements might be made. As a result of that committee's recommendations, this is now an RFP to go out to the market to seek input from carriers to get the best proposal for an up to 10-year plan. So the order here has been plan needed to be reviewed, a review by a committee was carried out, some suggestions for changes were made, and this is now an RFP to the industry to see what can be proposed in terms of providing a better benefits at a reasonable price. Final thing I want to say is that this is all subject, of course, to collective bargaining.
Can I have a second for the report, please, for the motion? Okay. Councillor Stevens. Discussion on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Question.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, well, we're, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. In the effort of making the system more efficient and more cost-effective, there's another option here I'm wondering if it's been explored, and that's actually administering these benefits in-house. Has that been part of the conversation, and has it been explored as a potential cost saving?
Ms. Howard?
Through your worship, no, I don't believe we have looked at doing it in-house at this point.
If I could follow up, is there a reason why? Is there any evidence to suggest that that would or would not be more cost effective given the rationale behind this change?
Ms. Howard?
Through your worship, I might ask Ms. Haru to provide a comment.
Okay.
Through you, your worship, I think, we have benefit carriers in the industry that are equipped to administer benefit programs for us. So although the city has the ability to set up our programs with the types of coverages that we want to cover, there are many carriers that have all the technology and resources available to provide the benefit or do the administration side of the benefit, and that's what this is about.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to clarify, what you're also saying is we actually don't have the technical capacity to do this.
Correct.
Thank you. At what point do we include in this conversation through the chair the outcome of the employee engagement survey results? So for instance, if I look at it, pay and benefits, it's actually the most cool response from employees. Just 50% are satisfied with pay and benefits, 27% are actually dissatisfied, which is the second largest dissatisfaction ranking. Will this be a factor of the conversation looking for a bidder, or does that come later when the review is conducted? And does the city have input on the criteria for that review, or is that simply the administrators through the chair?
Ms. Howard?
Through your worship, what I'll ask Ms. Haru to go through is the full process from the RFP to selection,
Thank
getting
you.
to council, and how the unions will be involved.
Ms. Haru?
Through you, your worship. So the intention is to go out to RFP with the industry to look at the benefit program or package as it is today, and with that in mind to look at ways to maybe improve our cost expenses. In addition to that, we do know where we have some opportunity to rebalance or change the plans, and we'll be looking at costing information at that same time for the committee to consider, so that we can look at rebalancing or improving some of the benefits. And through that process, we'll be engaging the unions. We've asked that employees or talk to their unions or respective unions about their priorities in regards to employee benefits, and bring that forward through discussion with the union, so that we can understand what priorities the employee membership is looking for. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The next report is to extend banking services, the agreement. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. As a recommendation of the Finance and Administration Committee, that the Executive Director of Finance and Corporate Services be authorized to negotiate and approve a one-year extension to the existing 5-year business banking and auxiliary services agreement with the Toronto Dominion Bank for business banking, and 2 such additional auxiliary banking service agreements that relate to the business banking and auxiliary service agreement, and which are identified in the report below, be prepared by the solicitor. What is sought here is a one-year extension to the current contract for these banking services. The reason for this is that the city wants to go out with an RFP to explore the whole range of its business banking services. This is a complex area. The city knows from previous experience that this will take up to 18 months to fully implement. What they're seeking here is the extension of the existing agreement to give them time to put out a proper RFP and conduct a proper RFP process.
Seconder for the report, please. Councillor Massanelli. Discussion on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Massanelli. Do you want the floor?
What's that?
You want the floor? Yes.
I stepped out of a previous discussion due to the fact that I have a wife who is part of administration, and that's why I came back in.
So that's why you declared a conflict and left the room? Okay, for the record, so we know the reason why you left the room. Thank you very much for that. Excellent. Third report is the Heritage Building Rehabilitation Program, Report 91. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, again from the Finance and Administration Committee. And I'd move that this matter be tabled to a future City Council meeting. Not all the documents necessary have been signed, so that the administration has requested a tabling, and I'm happy to move that.
Tabling motion, can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Young, no debate on a tabling motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, the Organic Waste Service recommendation. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. I'd like to move CR 18-92, which is the Organic Waste Service recommendation, but I would like to take the reference to October 2018 out of the recommendations. If I could have a seconder?
Seconder for that. Councillor
Thank you.
Massanelli. Discussion on that amendment.
On the amendment?
That's the
Taking
amendment.
the date? Sure.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Councillor Bryce?
Thank you. So this has to do with the organic waste service recommendation. So maybe I'll start by talking about the recommendation itself is for option 4. And I would like administration to go through what this pilot project actually would entail through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I will start and then perhaps I'll have Ms. Legault just add anything. The recommendation that is in front of you is for a permanent curbside food and yard waste collection service. What we are recommending also in the report is to do a pilot to assess the operational and logistics that would be needed to implement a program citywide. And so starting in 2019, we would look at procuring equipment and whatever pieces of equipment or materials we would need to implement a pilot. The pilot would be then tested. We would bring recommendations back to council on what a full implementation of the program might look like. I'll ask Ms. Legault if I've missed anything specific.
Ms. Legault?
Through you, your worship, the pilot project is, as Ms. Gizmo identified, it is to evaluate the customer experience and the operational logistics of implementing a service to over 65,000 homes. So we felt that a pilot or a trial period to work out the kinks would be the appropriate approach in this case.
Thank you. So I know previous years, I almost want to say previous decades because it has been so long, we've done lots of public consultation to see what we as a city want in our waste management system. Was this part of that public consultation through you, Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, a recommendation for an organics program was part of Waste Plan Regina approved by council.
Thank you. So what do you say to people, or what should we say to people who are telling us as councillors that I already have an organic waste in my own home, I already compost and put it into my own garden and I've already do all that. Why should I pay the city to do the same thing whenever I'm already doing it? So how does that change what we're asking people to do through you, Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, from time to time we do waste audits that continue to assess what is being collected within our garbage bins. I believe the information collected from those audits continues to support that there is a significant amount of organic matter in the waste that, if diverted from the landfill, would add life to the landfill. I'll ask Ms. Legault or Mr. Brody if they have some specifics on what those audits have provided.
Ms. Legault?
You, your worship, the backyard composting, we appreciate what residents do with backyard composting. The Scrape Your Plate program that we are introducing will extend that beyond the organic materials that can go into a backyard composter. We're now going to include meats, dairies, fats, oils, and greases, and also certain recyclable products, particularly soiled food containers that cannot go into the recycling program because they're soiled. The pizza box is probably the best example. Those types of materials will be able to go into this particular waste stream.
Thank you for that information. I'll maybe leave my comments and I'll wrap it up at the end. Thank you.
Okay. We do have other speakers. Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I had a chance to ask quite a few questions actually at the Public Works Committee, but since we do have the media here, I had a question, and I don't think the report does this issue justice, and I think administration deserves some time to explore it a bit further. What are the possibilities that we could look into with this kind of program? So we're not just talking about turning this into compostable waste that we would then sell and put in gardens. What are the possibilities with regards to using this kind of waste in the future?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, there are technologies out there that can take waste such as this and turn it into energy. They would be technologies that we would definitely look into as part of this, but they would be part of probably a longer-term solution for this program.
Great, thank you. To follow up on that point, obviously we're looking at the rollout of a pilot, its implementation. When would that conversation start if we're thinking about a waste to energy? Is that something that's naturally going to come out of the waste plan, or is that something that we need to start talking about as really the addition of this pilot program?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, through the working towards full implementation, definitely looking for a processor will be part of the end goal for full implementation. However, processor at this point might not be a waste to energy producer. I think it will depend or be driven a lot by the volumes that are available, and in our discussions will likely involve getting other municipalities involved, because I don't think we would have enough product in Regina alone to supply such an industry. But I'll ask Ms. Legault to talk about some of the things they have been exploring and what they have looked at.
Ms. Legault?
Through you, your worship, we've had the opportunity over the last couple of years to hear from a number of industry experts on opportunities for waste to energy. As Ms. Gizmo said, the program that we're putting forward will divert about 18,000 tons of material, which is not sufficient to move forward to a full-scale waste to energy facility. However, it is the opportunity for the city to lead the way in the region, to foster economic development through new industry coming into the city or existing industry to change their processing, and when it becomes more of a acceptable method of waste management, the opportunity to convert waste to energy becomes more feasible.
Thank you. Final question through the chair. I heard revenue and I heard regionalism here. I was wondering if you could expand on this. Does the rollout of this project give Regina the capacity to be a regional composter? And if so, does that lend to the possibility of new sources of revenue, even beyond just access to the landfill?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I would suggest we're going to start small. This is for residential properties only. It does not include all properties in Regina. So it starts with the 65,000 properties that currently receive curbside service at this time. I think we start there, and then the opportunities that grow from that could go a number of different directions.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other speakers? Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two questions for the administration. The first involves Clause 4 of the recommendation, funding the annual operating expenditures of Service Option 4 from general revenue or a user fee will be determined by City Council decision later. By general revenue or by user fee, first of all, can you explain exactly what that means? And secondly, can you tell me if a user fee would automatically be coupled with the idea that you would be creating a waste utility division?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, currently garbage collection, as an example, is collected and paid for through our property taxes. That is an option for this program. On the other side, our recycling program, our blue bin program, is collected through a fee that shows up on your water utility bill. Those are the two options we have for funding this program. The selection of one or the other for this service, if looking at it as this service alone, does not preclude a utility.
Sorry, I missed
Does
one.
not preclude a utility.
Does it mandate obligatorily a facility?
Ms. Gizmo?
No.
No, it doesn't. So it's an open question.
Yes.
Your Worship, I ask that question simply because it depends where the revenues are directed, and that's clearly a matter for another time. My second question is this. Many homeowners looked out their window this morning and saw their lawns covered with leaves. And that raises the question of how they dispose of those leaves. And I understand in this report that the suggestion is that while right now we have depots, several, that there will be one depot where all people wishing to transport their leaves could take those leaves for disposal. Do I have that correct?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, that is correct. What is proposed in this report as an interim solution and a solution that would continue on after curbside service is offered is a permanent leaf and yard depot, much like is offered in our seasonal depots right now. The main difference would be it would be a permanent site. It would be open for the full growing season, and it would be open multiple days of the week.
Many residents have said that they have trouble even with the multiple depot sites. Basically, if you don't own a Ford F-150 truck, how on earth do you get the leaves to the site? And so what happens, of course, is that they put their leaves on the street, hoping when the street sweep takes place, they'll get taken away. They ration their leaves into the yellow bin week by week by week till sometime in December when they're finally gone. Is that your experience generally? And if so, what do you suggest to solve that problem?
Excuse me?
Through your worship, getting to a curbside service will require the efforts that we're describing of going through the pilot and determining the logistics and the customer feedback on that. Until that is available, the curbside or the depot options or ultimately the permanent site is something that we can offer to residents that do have the capabilities taking the material to those sites. We do realize some property owners cannot do that, and we know that they are putting that waste likely into the brown bin, and it is coming to the landfill.
Thank you. Your Worship, I support this program generally. I think there's some details that we will get that will help us understand costing a little better. I appreciate Ms. Gizmo's answer on the leaf problem. It is a big problem, and I understand that in a few years when you get to the full organics program, that problem will be solved. I just wish to say that I've heard from my residents, and I know others have heard from their residents, that getting rid of leaves from beautiful trees is a challenging problem. And I guess the answer is we should do the best we can for the present, and if we adopt this program, there will be a permanent solution that will be more workable. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Other speakers to the report? Councillor Brasciani.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for all the work that's been done in this program. I know the organics waste has been done in other cities for quite some time. I would like to ask, though, how did other cities get started in this?
Ms. Gizmo?
Your Worship, I'll ask Ms. Legault or Mr. Brody to talk about some of the research that they've learned or some of the information that they've learned from other municipalities.
Okay. Mr. Brody?
Through you, Your Worship. So, I could probably talk for a long time on this. I'll try and keep it brief. If you want to look locally, a lot of what has been done, generally municipalities will start with depot options, diverting leaf and yard waste, and then moving to a curbside service as Calgary recently did. A lot of other provinces and other regions have had support from the provincial government in terms of diverting leaf and yard waste particularly. There will be funding opportunities available for that. So you saw those initiatives in Ontario, Manitoba, and Alberta over the past decade or so that really drove that. So there were more options for them. But this is a pretty standard approach for the prairies, exactly the same that Saskatoon is taking right now.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I do have a question in regards to federal dollars in regards to this pilot project, or have we explored any federal dollars to help cover with the FCN Green Municipal Fund?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, yes, there are opportunities through the FCM Green Municipal Fund, and we are looking for opportunities to apply for those. We have put an application in for the Low Carbon Economy Fund, but we're unsuccessful in receiving any funds from that program at this time, but we will continue to look for opportunities.
Perfect. Through you, Your Worship, just one more question. In regards to the concerns that I've heard is with the bins. They don't want another bin. They don't have room in their garage or... So is there something that other cities have done to have smaller bins for compost, or I know that the process and what's going to happen is that the compost would be picked up weekly, and the cost savings there then would be the garbage, the waste would be picked up bi-weekly, and the recycle would be picked up bi-weekly. So has there been anything in other cities where the bins have been smaller, because now there's 3 bins, to reduce that, to address that issue?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, yes, there are a number of different options available. I think we'd be cautious to preclude it as a bin option until we do go through some of the logistics and look at what options are available. There may be different options.
Okay. And you indicated, through your worship, you indicated this is going to be a trial. We're going to see how this works. How will that trial work, and how would we choose the area that it's going to... We're not going to do it across the whole city, I'm assuming, or we're just going to pick an area. How is that going to work?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I'll have Ms. Legault describe how the pilot will operate.
Ms. Legault?
Through you, Your Worship. So the plans we have for the pilot are very preliminary. As next year we will engage a consultant to help us move forward. Our preliminary thoughts on the pilot will be 10 neighborhoods spread across the city, and identifying different collection methods. So we have back alley, we have front street, we have automated, we have manual collection. We're looking at approximately 1,000 homes, so 10 sites with 100. That is what we typically, 100 is what we usually do with our waste audits, and we find that 1,000 will give us a good representation of the city. We're hoping that our participants, more than hoping, almost expecting our participants to provide us with feedback as to what's working and what's not working, so that we can incorporate that into a full implementation across the city.
Perfect. So, and just, sorry, one last question, Your Worship. In regards to the cost, taxpayers want to know what is this going to cost us, and we're still going to determine whether it's going to be a general revenue, out of general revenue, or a user fee. So that's a discussion that still needs to happen. But overall, if you could just go over the costs just very quickly of what this would, what will be for the property owner.
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, the estimated annual cost to deliver this program is at $7.9 million. We looked at what that might cost for a property owner in a house that worth a value of $350,000. I should also say this is assuming that we would move to biweekly garbage collection, and that would reduce some of the costs for that program. That would offset some of the costs of the new program. The cost through the tax base would be an increase of $36 to a house value of $350,000. On a user fee, that would come out to around $51. $51.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Shandy. Councilor O'Donnell.
So a little full disclosure here. One, I currently use a cart that is picked up weekly. It's a private service. I've used it for 3 years. We happen to garden, have what I call a normal to larger size lot, and it works. It just works. That's one. Two, I was in Calgary and was corrected by my 8-year-old granddaughter as I was scraping my chicken bones into the garbage, and she said, no, it goes over here. And so in their cupboard, they had a small little container, plastic container. Inside was a bag, and that's where all the scraped dishes go. and then it went into, they live in a condo development, went into a barrel. So, and Calgary has nothing but small bins. Small bins meaning you have a choice in Regina to have the larger bin and smaller bin. That's the same size as what I use right now on my weekly pickup and so on, and I would again tell you that it works really well. I'm going to go back to the beginning. In the beginning, we sat around here and we talked about recycling. At the time we introduced recycling, we said, well, that only makes sense that if we do that really well, we're going to go to bi-weekly garbage pickup. And by the way, at that same time, we talked about this program. Now, we're a little slow on the uptake because people haven't gone into it very well. So I'm glad that we're here today, 10 years in the making. A couple questions. The first one is, I noticed that in a couple of other cities, they don't do scrape the plate. They do fruit and vegetable only in terms of their organics in addition to the yard. Can someone explain to me why they did that and why you would copy that?
Ms. Gizmo?
I'll have Mr. Brody provide some of that information.
Mr. Brody?
Through you, Your Worship. So the determination on what you include in a program is based purely on how you process it. So if you want to do windrow composting, you can only take fruit and vegetables, but it's a lot cheaper. So if you want to have a more comprehensive program, it will be more expensive, but you can scrape the plate.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. When you were considering and looking at all sorts of opportunity, did you look at the idea of a commercial operation for compost, the idea that it could be sold, could be, I don't know, I think in a couple cities they give it away and so on to the residents who pay. What were you thinking of in terms of the end result here with the product?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I'll have Ms. Legault provide that.
Ms. Legault?
Through you, your worship. At this point in time, we are looking at a number of options, one of them being to do our own composting. Currently in Regina, we have a commercial partner that we use for our leaf and yard waste that has a very successful composting facility that is moving more into a full organic to include the other types of, like the full scrape the plate. We could look at doing it ourselves within the footprint of the landfill or the waste management center location. It will be one of the things that we look at through the procurement process as well as the pilot to make sure that what we provide is a sustainable but an affordable program for the residents.
Thanks. As part of the proposal here, is it that the homes would be provided this small container so that it could be collected separate from the regular garbage and then disposed of within their home?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, similar to Councillor Bresciani's question, those things will be explored through the pilot and we'll determine what options are there.
So not there yet, but would that not be fairly common in other programs?
I would say yes, that is.
Okay, thanks. I want to just go back a little bit to the regionalization and the commercial nature of this. So we have in the province a government that has said we're going to go to only four regional, am I right, is it 4 regional landfills in the province? I can't remember what the number is.
4, yes, it's 4.
It is 4, yeah, I think it's 4. So 4 regional landfills. So if right now only Saskatoon and only Regina are even considering this program, but one has to believe that other communities would look that maybe there's a place to put this product. So I think that the notion of regional, which is, I think we've done a good job of being a leader in that, and 2, the availability of a commercial application, in other words, revenue. I think Councillor Stevens is very aware that I have a vested interest in this whole notion of waste energy. And in the city of Surrey, they are producing natural gas, but the volume is much greater. And I think in the end, maybe a few years from now, that's something that we can look at. I'll be supporting this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Findura.
Again, here we go. Thank you, Worship, through you. First question, the first comment I will have is the many residents that I spoke with, and that is that's quite a few. And the first thing they tell me, as we heard before, is they don't want another bin. Second comment I will make is I'm just listening to Councilor O'Donnell. There's already a service out there, and they pick up from Councilor O'Donnell. So then discussing with the residents, why do we need to spend all this money on something that someone is already doing it? Another comment I will have is Councilor O'Donnell subscribes to a service. There's a provider already there. Why do we need to get into business with that? So that's my thing is that here we are spending all this money on something that's already there. Do we need to get into this business? So now next question or comment would be a question to the leaf, the branches, the fruit, the vegetables, most paper products will decompose in the landfill. So am I looking at this the wrong way?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I'll have Ms. Legault provide some information, but leaf on yard waste actually don't degrade very well in the landfill when it's compacted. As Mr. Brody had described before, it needs aeration and it needs to be moved around for it to decompose properly. So actually in the landfill, it does not effectively degrade as most people would think. But I'll have Ms. Legault add anything to that.
Ms. Legault?
Through you, your worship, to just further what Ms. Gizmo started with regards to the decomposition of leaf and yard matter in a landfill. Because of landfilling techniques, which means we cover the waste as soon as it comes in, that actually is what creates greenhouse gases. It actually turns the material into methane. And so what we're trying to do is remove the organic matter from the landfill to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas production that's happening right there. So that's the difference. Open air composting, which is windrow composting, which Mr. Brody referred to, is the better way of composting as opposed to creating greenhouse gases in a landfill. With regards to your subscription service, you're correct. Councillor O'Donnell does subscribe to one of the services in the city. Subscription is it's a good way of starting a program. However, it doesn't meet the outcomes that we are looking for, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the landfill, as well as reducing the amount of material going to the landfill, extending the life of the landfill. Saskatoon has had a subscription service for a number of years, and they are now moving to a mandatory program, specifically because there aren't enough people willing to do this on a voluntary basis.
Okay. So then I'll continue with my comments. I am not convinced. I'm concerned with adding another fee to the residents. We already have a fee on your recycling, so then grandma is having difficulties meeting her day-to-day operation. So we're gonna put another fee for another bin, which they don't want. It concerns me. There is a program we're already doing it, which is a depot. What is so difficult of continuing and expanding on a depots? So my question is, why can't we go with a depot? There is a price this year that we can go doing a depot at 500,000, whatever, and then we have number 4 at 7.9.
Excuse me.
What benefit do we have that's better on the 7.9 million because it's expensive to something that we're already doing it with a depot?
Ms. Gizmo.
Through your worship, there's a couple things that I can comment on. One is the depot does not collect food and like the scrape the plate option as Ms. Legault had described. So the recommendation in front of you is collecting a larger category of waste and removing it from the landfill. The leaf and yard depots, yes, were an option that were explored, but they do not collect the volume of waste that we would be looking for to meet the diversion targets for the landfill. The costs that go into the program are an additional cost, whether through your taxes or through a user fee. However, the savings for residents and for the city over the long term is the lifespan of the landfill and deferring having to either expand the landfill or build a new landfill.
Okay. So then the question on if the third bin for organics is the choice, the concern is that the smell, the concern is of rodents attacking these bins. What's the answer for that?
Ms. Gizmo.
Through your worship, again, we've talked with other municipalities who have implemented this. We'll work with our partners, for example, in Saskatoon. There are many options out there that can provide to address the concerns that you're raising with respect to smell and rodents and so forth.
Okay, so just to give you a comment, we did the recycling, and we've charged a fee, and we only have 20% diversion. I understand we work towards all kinds of things, but what I'm hearing from residents, I'm passing a message on as a messenger, is that program at that end with the fee and what we were doing on recycling, it didn't work. So the question they asked me to ask here is, what makes you feel that this is going to work, another fee and making all these expenses, that this is going to work?
Ms. Gizmo.
Through your worship, the recycling that is done through the blue bin was part of the solution to reach the diversion target that was set out in Waste Plan Regina. This is the next step and was part of the plan that would help reach that diversion target that we did set. We are successfully reducing waste that's going to the landfill through the blue bin program.
Okay, so my final comment is I will vote against this, because there's at least 100 families that I spoke with about the extra bin. It's the biggest issue here is another bin, another fee increase, and they're not supporting that at all. Depot, by all means, several areas we've got around the city, we can send them out, and that is a lot more cheaper. Yes, I'm hearing stuff that some people cannot deliver stuff to it, but other people can. So depot, yes, and the extra bin, for me, the way I see it from my residents, no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Findura. Councilor Flegel.
Thank you. The trial, how much is that going to cost us?
Ms. Gizmo.
Through your worship, for the preliminary steps and for the trial, we've allocated $3.5 million for that part of the work.
$3.5 million to do 1,000 households?
Through you, your worship, I'll have Ms. Legault describe all the pieces. Like that
Okay.
includes the consulting services and
Okay.
purchasing equipment, and in addition to executing the pilot.
Thanks.
Ms. Legault.
Through you, your worship, the $3.5 million is broken up into four items. The communication plan, which will take us not just through the pilot, but through a citywide implementation, is at $500,000. The staffing to work through this is $600,000. A consultant at $600,000, and the pilot itself. So for the carts, for the little cart or the little bucket that Councillor O'Donnell spoke about, and the collection and the processing, we're looking at $1.8 million for a 12-month period for the pilot. And if I may, with regards to the cost of the program, just to clarify, the $7.9 million is the full cost of the delivery of the organics program to the 65,000 residents. What we have to consider, which Ms. Gizmo also referred to, is the savings of approximately $4.5 million that will be realized through the reduction of garbage collection to a bi-weekly service from a weekly service.
Okay, I'm good with that for now. One thing that you mentioned and Ms. Gizmo mentioned is based on $350,000 value of a home. What does the value of the home have to do with, why would somebody that has a $350,000, why are we using that number anyway in a composting situation where you have people living in million-dollar homes, and you have people, are we saying we're going to tax people differently based on their house value?
Excuse me?
For organic pickup?
Through your worship, it would be just the general part of your taxes, and your taxes are based on your property value.
Oh, I can't go with that, sorry. I don't like that at all, because I think that's wrong. Anyway, that's that point. I have not heard mention of condo pickup. Any condos being picked up, or are we on a regular basis, or because we've already had a discrepancy going on with garbage collection where condo people are being double taxed. So what's the status with condos in this upcoming option 4?
Ms. Kismo?
Through your worship, we would look at all properties that we currently deliver curbside services to. We recognize there are some condo owners that do not receive the service, and the conversation about a condo rebate would be a separate topic of discussion.
Okay, so, yeah, I don't like that one either, but anyway. Is there any possibility, now Ms. Legault talked about $1.8 million roughly. If this program doesn't go through, do we eat that $1.8 million after the trial because we bought the equipment and the buckets and the small buckets? Or what do we do with them? Sell them back to somebody else, or what happens if the program doesn't go through?
Ms. Kismo?
Through your worship, there will be some investment, and should the pilot not be successful and we want to divest of those resources, we will certainly look at that.
Okay. Of $7.9 million for you, Mr. Mayor, how much of that is strictly pickup cost, and how much is processing cost in that $7.9 million that we're talking about annually?
Through your worship, I'll have Ms. Legault provide a response. It is important to note that is an estimate this time until we determine what the processing is. And what the costs are associated with that. It would be difficult to give you an exact number, but I'll have Ms. Legault provide some additional information.
Thanks.
Ms. Legault.
Through you, your worship, with regards to the full city implementation of $7.9 million, the weekly collection would be just over $6.1 million, the processing at $1.8 million. And those are based on just current estimates.
So 80%, basically 80% is labor. Labor pickup?
Ms. Kismo?
Yes, the largest part of this program is the weekly collection.
Okay, thank you. Where are we sitting right now with the recycling? When we started out the recycling, we were happy to get a 50% pickup volume, I guess, when we first started out. We thought that was good, and we said it was going to grow, and I think we're up at around 80% now. Is that correct, or for household?
Ms. Kismo?
Through your worship, I'll just seek clarification first, and I'll have Ms. Legault answer. Are you talking about the set-out rate or the percent of diversion?
The amount of the households that are utilizing the service now, I think is what I'm getting at.
I think you're asking about the set-out of the bins?
Right.
Ms. Legault?
I'm going to, through you, your worship, I'm going to make a stab at this. It is in the Waste Plan Regina update report, which I don't have in front of me. Okay. The set-out rate for recycling is approximately 75%.
75, okay. I read somewhere, saw somewhere, and if I could, that there was a survey that was sent out and said, do you use recycling of meat and byproducts today? And there was only 30% of the people that responded said yes. Was that our survey, or was that done generally in the public, or I thought it was through us. Did we do a survey to ask people if they use organic recycling today? Or yeah.
Through your worship, I'm not sure what you're referring to exactly. We have done market research, though, that has asked residents about their recycling and composting activities and what they currently do in each of their households.
One more question, and I'll sit down. Thank you. And a city drop-off. If we were to, would we maybe be better off to set up like 3 or 4 different stations throughout the city and say, here's a little bucket. Everybody gets a little bucket, and you have to take it down to 4th and Albert Street, or South Albert, or East. Is that not a more viable option at this particular point to see if people are actually even going to recycle waste foods, organics, than spending $3.5 million on something that may or may not work?
Through your worship, depots is an option that we explored within the report. A lot of the feedback that we've heard with respect to the depots are much like Councillor Hawkins said earlier. It's the ability to get materials from their homes to the depot, and if they don't own a truck or a vehicle that can transport it, they don't feel comfortable or aren't willing to bring their material to those depots.
But I'm just talking about the organic food. I'm talking about a container that's half the size of a normal garbage can that would probably be filled up on a week to 2 week basis. I'm not talking the leaves and all the other stuff.
Through your worship, I'm not familiar with a program that would have household organics being brought to a depot on a weekly basis, but it's certainly something we can explore if anyone else is doing that.
The only reason I bring that up, Mr. Mayor, is just to clarify, is that restaurants have large vats of grease that they can drop off at different depots throughout the city, pour them into a bucket, and they're taken away by whoever. And it's been a successful way of taking it, and I thought that might be an option for us to look at as well, instead of going through the household and then taxing somebody because they have a $500,000 house. I don't get that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Murray.
Thanks. I just need to know, through the chair, I just need to know, there's a stat that we're the only city over 150,000 population in Canada that does not have a composting program. Is that correct? That stat? I don't know if I'm asking a stat out of the blue, but we're part of the benchmark, so I thought maybe.
Through your worship, I'm getting a nod that yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Massanelli.
Thank you. Through the chair. So I noticed we're talking about costs on this motion. I think we've gotten to this point because, if I'm not mistaken, the environmental laws were set in Saskatchewan in the 1980s and only recently enforced. If I'm not mistaken, we've gone from over 500 provincial landfills to around 200 and on our way down still. Is that correct? 300 now and on our way down. So as Councillor O'Donnell alluded to, we've become a regional landfill. If we don't do any of these programs, what's the life expectancy of our landfill?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I'll have Ms. Legault describe what the current life expectancy is, what the life expectancy would be if we introduced this program, and what would happen if we were able to regionalize it.
Thank you.
Ms. Legault.
Through you, your worship, right now with our current programming, our expected life expectancy of our landfill is 28 years. By introducing the curbside organic program just to our own residential customers, that will reduce the amount of material going to the landfill of about 18,000 tons, which will extend the life, a very short amount, but 2.5 years. The intent is for the city to lead the way within the city itself, expand it to commercial and industrial customers, but then also to the region. And if we can get all our regional customers that currently bring material to the landfill today to divert all their recyclables and all their organics, the useful life of the landfill will extend to 82 years.
Okay. Now, some of the numbers that have been cited so far are $3.5 million for the pilot project and $7.9 million for the rest. What's the price to decommission a landfill?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, an expansion of the landfill is estimated at $50 million, and construction of a new landfill is over $100 million.
Okay, so potentially $150 million. So by doing this, we can take 28 years and turn it into 82 years and save the residents $150 million. So I think that $3.5 million investment to me is pretty sound. It's good for the future generations. It's one of the green initiatives we've been asking for so long. And besides that, it sounds like we're behind the times on what's going on, so I'm going to be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Massanelli. Other speakers to the report? You'll be closing the debate. The other speakers, though. Councillor Young, are you going to speak to it? If you want to, I'm not just asking. You look like you're writing some notes, so I'll give you the floor. Councillor Young, I don't want to put you on the spot. Go ahead.
I am totally in support of this because we're not making the final decisions tonight. This just means that we're going to be putting some things in place to allow us to explore this, both how we pay for it and how it will work. And it is a large undertaking, and it's going to require a pilot, and it's going to require us to pay attention to all the reports that come our way. And there's another one coming in October, I believe, that's going to talk about costs. At least that's what this says. Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, through your worship. Through the amendment today, we've actually deferred that conversation till the early part of next year.
Okay, but that will come.
That is correct.
So I think it's time for us to do this. It's time for us to save our landfill as much as we can, and it's time for us to learn how to do composting and organic waste. And it's a change, and people don't like change. It's difficult, and we don't know yet how we're going to pay for it, so that will create some concerns, but we'll have a chance to talk about that.
No. You can't speak. Can't enter the debate again. You've already spoken. Okay. Councilor Hawkins, do you want to take the chair for me, please? It's a point of order, yes, but it's not up to...
I'm answering a nasty email.
Well, I'm finished.
Your worship.
So, Deputy Mayor, I rise to support the recommendation, but I have some questions. I don't want to repeat what others have asked for, but I'm just trying to understand costing. That is not why we can't be more clear on the costing. Why we can't be more clear on whether it's going to be general revenue or it's going to be on the utility bill. I think we should know that and be clear to residents. So I'm not asking the question, I'm just saying we need to be clear on costing. We have a very complicated process going through here. So on the one hand, we have the organic waste recommendations here for what I will call is a trial. I think it's better than the other word, the trial being the word I want to use. Then we also have the solid waste curbside collection services that has now been delayed. And I'm just concerned about the delay of that, because within that report is what's the actual cost of garbage collection. That's a key element to address the issue for taxpayers. They want to know what that's going to be. It's also a key element of how we deal with condominiums, and how we identify that cost, and if this cost goes on to a utility bill as part of the utility, we need to know that too. So the point I'm making here is we need to be very clear in our messaging to the public. Very clear. There are a lot of moving parts here, lots of things that are happening, and with respect, residents are casual observers. They're expecting us to make the right decision here for them. So it's critical that we nail these numbers down, what the cost is going to be, what is the model going to be, quickly, so we know whether we're going to move to a utility or whether we're going to stay on the property tax bill. That means a lot to people, because you move the garbage collection out of your tax bill and onto utility, they think there's a tax increase. In fact, there isn't, but we need to explain it to them. We also need to know what that cost is, and I'm surprised we don't know that cost yet, frankly, that we don't know the cost of garbage collection per household. I'm just not clear as to why we would say we would value it as, a $350,000 home as opposed to the actual cost of that service. Now, that will come in the report, so I'm patient on this. But in the larger picture here, those members of council who've been here for a while have been waiting for this new service to come in. This has been an important element of making us a modern city, that mostly every city in Canada has this. So I'm really keen to have this happen. My only comment is we need to be very clear on the costing and the communication for residents to know exactly what they're going to get. Otherwise, we're going to have a bit of a blowback from residents why this is happening. The report didn't even speak in terms of a trial. Didn't even reference it at all. It talked about staging, but not a trial for, I guess it's 1,000 homes in 10 neighborhoods. This would be nice to know so we can explain it to residents right away. It's a trial for a limited period of time in certain areas of the city, and this is what the cost is going to be, and this is what we expect to have the kind of service, the alternatives. So We're not making a decision tonight. We're getting models to come back to us to talk about how we're going to do that. And I support that, but I want to stress we need to be clear on what we're asking for. The report doesn't say what we're asking for tonight. It's come out through members of council asking questions and the administration elucidating on those points. So we need to be very clear. Messaging is absolutely critical, but when we have a 20% diversion rate, well below what we targeted, as we look at for recycling in the general sense of the word, that we need to move forward on organic waste. I think this is incredibly a good opportunity. 50% of what we throw away is actually organic. And to Councillor Hawkins' point, the need for us to be clear on how we move forward on leaves and waste from yards is really critical as well. So I do support it. The communication strategy going forward is going to be absolutely critical for the success of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bryce, to close debate? Yeah. Oh, sorry. No. Are you sure? I forgot about that. Okay, it was on a question, a point of order. Okay. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. What I'm hearing around the table is people are frustrated because they don't know how much this is going to cost. What are the implications if we find that information out before we move forward with this pilot project?
Through
Ms. Mayor.
Through your worship, I do understand what we are been citing is what the residents will be paying, and the residents, what they pay through their property tax does vary based on the value of their home. So that is different. What the cost is of the service is the $7.9 million divided by the $65,000 or 65,000 homes. That is the cost per house, and we will come back and make sure that that number is very clear. There will be property owners that pay more than what it costs, and there will be property owners that pay less if it comes through your property taxes. And that is the way with garbage right now.
Right. And we have not made a decision on how we are going to be collecting this fee, whether it be the utility through your water bill or through the homeowner having it on their tax bill and paying a varying amount depending on the value of their house. Am I correct in that?
Through your worship, we have not made that determination. That will be a determination council will make. If you charge it through a user fees, it will be a more direct cost linked to the actual cost it is to deliver the service. So the user will pay what it costs to deliver the service. When you pay for it through the property taxes, there's a larger tax base that pays for the service, but not every property receives the service.
Right. Another frustrating part for me that you've just said is you have a $7 million amount. How do you know that amount if we haven't done the pilot project to see which way is going to work best?
Excuse me?
Through your worship, you're correct. That we have cited that this is an estimate and that those costs will be determined as we go through the pilot and go through procurement and validate those costs.
Thank you. So I'll go back to my original question when I got up the second time here. What are the implications if we sent this back and waited to find out or made a choice on which way we were going to collect the fee and how much it was going to be? What are the implications of doing that?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, that would somewhat depend on how council phrases it. The determination of how it's charged for will not need to be determined until 2023 when the full implementation is rolled out, or probably closer to 2022 before full implementation. Through the pilot, that does not need to be determined because the full cost of the pilot will be covered in the $3.5 million. It will be after we go to full implementation, we will need that decision for how it is paid for.
So I'll go back to the question just because maybe I need to word it slightly different. If we decide not to go forward with this tonight, but find out how we're going to actually pay for it before we approve this, what are the implications of that?
Through your worship, it would defer moving forward with the pilot work. And it would come, like right now we're targeting Q1 of 2019 for that report to come forward to council. And then following that, we could have this discussion and determine whether council wanted to move forward or not.
Okay. Thank you for that. My issue is we've been waiting so long to roll out this final part of our waste management strategy. It's hard to say yes or no to this without knowing how the taxpayers of Regina are going to pay for it and what they're actually going to be paying for. But until we do the pilot project, we're not going to nail down that question and how we actually, whether it be a depot that they send it to or curbside pickup or the like. So I think we need to move forward on a pilot project to see those definite costs and what implications they have for the citizens of Regina. So having said that, I will be in support of the recommendations from Public Works to move forward with it. I would like as quickly as possible for that report to come forward to talk about how we're actually going to pay for it. I know we won't know the exact dollar amount because that will be based on the pilot project and what the results of the pilot project are going to tell us of what's going to work best for the City of Regina. I just hope going into the pilot project, we're going into it with a completely open mind that if a depot is going to work for us, then that's what's going to work. If curbside pickup's going to work for us, that's what's going to work for us. We're not going to have our mind made up before we go into this pilot project. So having completely open mind about it, I will support moving forward with the pilot project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. You've closed debate on the issue, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Move on to information reports. If I could have a motion just to move all these 5 reports at once and people can select which ones they want. Councillor Hawkins, move that and seconder. Just to put them on the table. Okay, Councillor Young. Discussion on any of the reports that are information reports on the floor. So looking for Councillor Hawkins. Do you want to speak to any of the reports?
No, I'm happy to leave them as information reports.
Thank you. Discussions on any of the reports? I'm going to call a question to receive and file all those reports. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we're down to the notice of motion, and of course this is simply not debate the motion, it is to introduce the motion but not debate it, and we have Councillor Stevens, Findura, or Marie introduce and read the resolution portion of that. So, Councillor Stevens.
Great, thank you. Be it resolved that administration return to council by Q4 of 2019 with a proposed framework and implications for the City of Regina to join the growing number of municipalities from around the world and commit to being a 100% renewable city by 2050. And 2, seek external funding sources such as grants made available through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to finance the report and any future costs incurred from this commitment.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. No debating. That will be debated next month at City Council. Move into bylaws and related reports. We have 4 reports from Community Protective Services. The first one is the Pest Control Officer, Councillor Flagel.
Thank you. I rise in support of CR 18-93, and it's the, as you mentioned, the Pest Control Officers. And from January 1st of 2019 to December 31st of 2019, the names of Russell Irick, Ryan Johnson, Corey Doka, and Burton Gerspachter have been requested to be on this list. So
thank you. Seconder for the motion, please. Second that. Councillor Massanelli, debate, discussion on the report. It's all required by law, of course. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Transit fare incentives. Councillor Flagel.
Community report, transit fare incentives is CR 18-94, and this outlines the following new pass types to be approved January 14th, 2019. Monthly senior passes, semi-annual adult passes, semi-annual youth passes, adult passes, affordable passes. And the following charter rates are implemented effective January 14th as well, and I'll just run through that. Now, part of this was that what they've done is they've gone to a 31-day program instead of a monthly. So the January 14th, 2019 is just a date. It could be any date because all of the passes are based on a 31-day or times 6 months type of thing. Or when you do a 6-month, semi-annual, you get 1 month off, but it becomes a 31-day start date. So it's not imperative that it be January 1 or February 1st or anything like that. So that was some of the things that were brought up at Community Protective, and everybody seemed to be okay with this because it allowed a little bit more diversity in this. So it was good for all the citizens that wanted it. So I'll leave it at that.
Seconder for the motion. Okay. Councillor Stevens, you have some discussion on this. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. I just have a question about a companion, somebody who, if somebody needs some assistance either with their physical or mental health, how do we charge for that, if at all? Through you, Your Worship?
Mr. Onright.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll ask Mr. Bells to comment.
Through Your Worship, companions with a disability factor are free of charge on both systems.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was in there too.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I have a question about the affordable bus pass option. I'm really pleased to see this come forward, so I thank administration for the work. How is this assessed? What's the mean testing approach, and through what department is this conducted?
Mr. Onright.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll ask Mr. Bells to comment.
Mr. Bells.
Through Your Worship, the affordable passes, we're going to mirror with the community services group that have affordable fund passes. It's for individuals in low-income situations. We'll use the federal government standards of what it is to be a low-income earner. If it is approved, they would receive 20% off on their bus pass. That's the same as Saskatoon Transit.
Okay, thank you. The report speaks about a change in the fare strategy in 2015, and that resulted in decreased ridership. What was the change in strategy, and what caused this downward trend that since recovered?
Mr. Bells.
Through Your Worship, just again, when we increased our fares in the 3 years, 2015, 16, and 17, by a quarter to the cash fares, we saw a little bit of a reduction in ridership, and our customers are asking for better incentives for our loyalty program. So that's why we're here today to reward and create incentives for people not using their cash fares and buying either 20 riders or monthly passes. So that was our change in our strategy. We're hoping to see increased ridership and again, creating a loyal base of our customers.
Thank you. I think it's important to recognize that you increase prices of riding the bus and ridership goes down, and you decrease the cost of riding the bus and people get on it. Go figure. The $71 mentioned for the low-income reduced fare, that's simply to match Saskatoon, or is there, and from Saskatoon, was there some relationship to the actual low-income cutoff and affordability question?
Mr. Bells.
Through Your Worship, it's simply math that the affordable pass would be 20% from the adult or the youth pass. So in this example, it's $71.
Thank you.
Councillor Bershani, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to say thank you for this report and also all the work that transit does to make it affordable, but also very inclusive, of course, to increase ridership. One of the areas are people with disability in regards to the SED program and the SAP program. And with that, I think, and seniors as well. I'm glad to see that there's a discount now for seniors as well. Can you just tell me what that is?
Mr. Bells.
Through Your Worship, our senior passes, we only had a semi-annual and an annual pass. Our seniors were voicing that they would like to see a monthly pass as well, or a 31-day pass. All the other youth and adults had a 31-day pass. So that's the change we did with the seniors. At the same time, our analysis of other Canadian municipalities, we made a reduction in the report for the senior annual pass of 3 months free. So they get the pass, they pay for 12 months, and it's only at a cost of 9 months.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And back to the people with disability, how does that work? Once they are in the system, do they stay in the system? Or what are they required to do?
Mr. Bells?
Through your worship, the affordable transit pass, along with our discounted pass, we would do an annual check every October, November for individuals to produce the proper documentations to prove that they're in either those programs in the discounted pass or through the affordable pass. They would have to at least give us some documentations that they're in that program.
Thank you for that. So when you say an annual check, does that mean that you reach out to social services for those areas and ask for letters, or how does that how does that work?
Mr. Bells?
Through your worship, we would ask for some documentations to show that, like again, it'd be through the federal income tax or social services, that they would prove that they're in that kind of income bracket, and therefore they're approved for an annual year to be into our system. It's the same as what the Community Services Department does on their Affordable Fund Pass as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And I also, as Councillor Stevens indicated, for the lower income, I think that's wonderful that we were able to make that work to give people more of an opportunity to ride the bus. So again, thank you again to transfer all the work they've done.
Thank you, Councillor Brashani. Other speakers to the report? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Community Protective Services, the electronic on-street parking. Councillor Flagel.
Thank you. I rise in support of CR 18-95, and it's electronic on-street parking payment bylaw change. And it's recommended that City Council approve the change to the traffic bylaw 9900, recommending in this report as detailed in Appendix A, which would give the administration the ability to implement an electronic payment process for customers to pay for on-street parking. City solicitor be instructed to do this. Basically, it's Mr. Fayel's, Mr. Kaleem and his staff, and Mr. Onright as well, who's involved in that. And I think it's a good thing. It's something that's it's the wave of the future. If everyone, the younger generations like it, the olders. There's a few parking stalls downtown. I know Namrid uses a credit card and a phone system that works really well, according to Mr. Byers. And I think we can all get to that point and throughout the whole city. So I rise in support.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a seconder for the report, please? Councillor Brashani. Speakers to the report. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. I love this, so I'm all in. Question about how this works in reverse. In other words, first of all, this is an app, am I correct?
Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, that's correct.
So does this track stalls? So is there stall 200, 201, 203, and does it track it that way?
Mr. Onright?
To the best of my knowledge, yes. I'll let Mr. Kaleem provide further comment.
Kaleem, please.
Through your worship, we are not far enough along in the implementation stage to figure out how zones will work when somebody pays for parking, whether that's good just for that meter or that block or the entire downtown. We're not far enough along to see whether to see what makes sense for our current system.
Gotcha. Where I was going with this is that if this does track and there's always empty spots over on street over there, do we then look at preferred parking or rates or differential rates and so on? Is that a consideration that you may look at, or I can't believe it's new on the floor tonight.
Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, so there's another piece of work that we're bringing forward as part of the budget process, and that's the downtown parking, the asset work that we're going to have done, which between the combination of the two, the app that we're speaking about tonight, and the work that will come forward through the budget process, that will be taken into consideration.
Good, look forward to that. Thanks. Molin.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other questions on the report? So I have a couple, and it would be, the first one would be, when do we anticipate implementing this change? Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, the RFP is getting ready to go out. to receive proposals on the payment system or payment application. I'll ask Ms. Shaley or Mr. Kaleem to comment as to specific timing.
Mr. Kaleem?
Through you, Your Worship, just for clarification, the RFP is currently out, so we're just waiting for it to close. We plan to have this completely implemented by Q1 of 2019.
That's good. Will individuals still be able to use coins if they choose to, or is this strictly, it is only going to be by use of phone? Mr. Kaleem?
Through Your Worship, this would be an overlay, so yes, you can still use coin. The infrastructure that's in the field will remain.
This is very exciting. It was very good. Good. No other questions? I'll call, Councilor Massanelli?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In describing this, it's been pointed out that this will have a tracking system, a payment system, as well, I guess, data nowadays is something that's vulnerable, and I wonder, as we're procuring this app, are we paying attention to security needs of our residents, and is there any risk in this app?
Mr. Onright.
Through Your Worship, so in conversation with the clerk's office and our privacy area, that is taken very seriously through the RFP process and through the analysis of the proposals. That will definitely be at the forefront.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Massanelli. Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Last report to Community Protective Services, the Regina Fire Bylaw. Councilor Flagel.
Thank you. Regina Fire Bylaw, CR 18-96, and that the solicitor prepare the necessary bylaw to authorize the following. Repeal Regina Fire Bylaw 2015-18, bring forward the new Regina Bylaw as outlined in Appendix A to this report. This is a continuation of discussions we had, 2 years ago, I think, regarding some of the landlords about the fire smoke detectors that were to be looked at once a month, and there was a lot of upheaval from the landlords, and so we brought this back, and my understanding it's going to be a 6-month check, and now since then the fire chief and deputy or fire marshal, sorry, have brought some more information forward in terms of alarms as well. So I'll leave the floor open for some questions if you so choose. If not, it'd be an easy night for the two gentlemen up in the far left.
Oh, let's don't make it so easy on us. That's
No,
really
we probably won't.
questions. Need a seconder for the report, though. Councilor Stevens, discussion on the report. All those in favor? Councilor Young, you want to? No, it's okay. I'll give you the floor. Councilor Young, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could you give us a brief overview of the major changes to the fire code that you're bringing forward that differs from the original fire code that we're under now?
Chief Jackson.
So through you, Your Worship, the 4 key components that are changes to this bylaw are regulations, fees, permits, and licenses. So we are updating the bylaw to come into conformance with the National Fire and National Building Codes, and we do have some enhancements in there also for smoke alarms. Over the last 10 years, 10 of the 15 fire fatalities that we've had in the city have occurred in residential rental properties, so we want to bring that number down. Any loss of life is too many, and we want to bring that number down, and so what we're proposing with the new smoke alarm enhancements are less onerous than what we were proposing 2 years ago, but they still will move towards improving fire and life safety for tenants. So those are some of the regulation changes. Now we're also having some facility inspection fees. So that That would include, so facilities that require higher levels of service and more frequent levels of service from us due to their licensing through the province, we are looking at some fees for that, just to, and those are partial recovery fees. We're looking at recovering about 25% of our costs for doing those. And the last part is we've always had permits in place that we offer to stakeholders that need our services, for example, for pyrotechnics or fireworks, open air fires. Those we're looking to charge a cost recovery or a partial cost recovery fee for those permits, which sometimes include inspections with them also. And then lastly, but not least, we are introducing a false alarm fee. This is for repeat false alarms. And when we talk about false alarms, we're talking about a fire alarm system that is malfunctioning. It's not one that's working as intended, like, for example, it's detecting burnt toast or something like that. It's one that is indeed malfunctioning. And even with those, we are we're taking a reasonable approach to that, and we are offering a warning for the first one, and then that would be in a letter format that warns the person that we've responded to your occupancy with a false alarm, and the second one will have a fee. So that's a highlight of some of the major changes within the bylaw.
Okay, thank you for that. The other question that I have is, when this first came forward, there was a concern that that immigrants and newcomers to the country are not aware of some of these issues, and there needs to be some education there. Are you going to be involved in that at all, or is that left to Open Door Society and other organizations?
Chief Jackson?
Through you, Your Worship, we are already involved with that, and we have been working extensively with the Open Door Society and the immigrant groups within Regina, and doing that public education. Part of the residential cooking study that we took part in and partnered with the University of Regina identified that sector also as a vulnerable group, and we are already implementing the findings of that research project that we engaged in, and have been doing a lot of public education in that sector.
Okay, and how will the Landlord Association and all the members of that association, and some who are landlords and not members of the association, do you have a plan for communicating these new rules to them?
We do. As we were bringing these changes in and contemplating and researching and developing this bylaw, we did consult with over 300 stakeholders. A key stakeholder was the Landlords Association, and you'll see in the package that they have provided a letter of endorsement and support for our approach in this regard. And we will continue, in particular with the false alarms. They're not going to take effect until July 2019, and we do plan to do a communication and awareness campaign throughout the next over 6 months.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for all the consultation and the work you did to bring this forward. It'll make the city a safer place.
Thank you, Councillor Young. No further discussions on this report. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have 4 bylaws. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Brasciani, the bylaws 2018-44, 49, 52, and 53 be introduced and read for a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Councillor Young, that bylaws 2018-44, 49, 52, and 53 be read a second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Your Worship, I move, seconded by Councillor Findura, that Council hereby consents to bylaws 2018-44, 49, 52, and 53 going to a third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
Your Worship, I move, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell, that bylaws 2018-44, 49, 52, and 53 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Notice of inquiry. Note there is an inquiry by Councillor Stevens related to the plans for Broad Street. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, please.
I wish to rise on a procedural point. I submit that the notice of inquiry is not validly given because it doesn't conform with the rules, it not being an inquiry under the rules. I cite 31(1) of the procedural bylaw. Inquiries shall be brief and to the point and shall be answerable by brief statements.
Okay. Well, I would ask that we allow the administration to look at that and come back with their determination whether this actually fits within that guideline or not, and let them have that determination.
Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins? Okay. Motion to adjourn, please. Okay. Councillor Bryce? Councillor Hawkins, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Have a good evening, everyone.